Welcome into the HawksZone Rundown, everyone. We're back at it again tonight with another live episode. Tonight, we're going to kind of go into the draft a bit, but first, we're obviously going to touch on a bunch of the Seahawk news that's broken over the last couple of days here. And luckily for me, I got Michael Thompson of Field Gulls and Brandon Cain of the Hawks Nest joining me. So we're going to get into all this stuff. Everyone, get your comments, get your questions into the chat. When we get to the mock draft, make sure you guys put your stuff in there to see who we go after. And if you got any ideas of who we should be looking at, don't forget, guys, subscribe, hit that like button, share this with your friends, other fellow Seahawkers. So after this, guys, we'll get into it.
So y'all can sit here and ask me all the questions y'all want to.
Don't you ever talk about me.
Yeah, let's go. It's go time, baby.
Here comes Gino. Steps up, takes that shot to the end zone. It is Metcalf.
I'm just about that action, boss.
You about to go get it. You just like to do it.
That's what it is.
Off me.
Nobody in the world can do it.
Are you kidding me? Trying to do that. Pass is caught back in. Jackson Smith is jigged on. The surge music moves in. Throws it forward. Oh my goodness, he caught it.
This is the HawksZone Rundown with your hosts, Ryan and Bryce.
Welcome in, guys, to the HawksZone. How's it going?
Doing great. It's good to be
Doing
back.
good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it should be a good show. We got Brandon Cain in here from the Hawks Nest, and we got Michael Thompson now of Field Gulls over with me and Ryan and Mookie and everyone over there. So tonight should be a good one, guys. So obviously, we have nothing really to talk about. Like, there's been nothing that's happened in the Seahawks world over the last 48 hours that would cause any of us to have to do any content creation. But let's just start with the obvious. Josh Jobe got re-signed today. That's huge for Seattle.
Huge.
Let's go.
Draft freed up. All about value now.
Right? So, guys, obviously, we've got Josh Jobe re-signed, and I'm really happy about that. Like, he was one of the guys that I thought they'd get this done with really quickly. But let's be honest. Let's get into the main topic that everyone wants to talk about. DK Metcalf requested a trade. So, Brandon, when you saw the news, what was your initial feelings about this?
Not surprised. The team soft dangled him last week, and I think that that's probably then something that happens in conjunction with then he comes back, they do initial negotiations this week, or you get an idea of what the team's looking to offer and give you, and the combination of those two being not answers that I'm sure DK wanted to hear makes him go, okay, well then send me to somebody who's going to pay me what I want to be paid, and that's how we get to here.
Mike, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I can't agree more. Like, it's kind of been hanging over the franchise a little bit, you know, the impending contract coming up for DK as he's kind of entering those prime years and getting closer to 30, and kind of what you see with a lot of receivers his size. You don't see a lot of that as they go into their 30s and how well they age and stuff. So it's kind of always been that question of, is Seattle going to pay him like a top 10 wide receiver? Because that's how he feels. I think a lot of people here would agree DK is a top 20 receiver, but we're still kind of waiting to see if he'll hit that next step. And so then when you heard the news out of the combine with the Green Bay Packers and stuff, that kind of got the ball rolling. So I don't think it was that sense of shock. I think the sense of shock was the timing of the Tyler Lockett stuff. And just kind of, I think that got announced, and then 15 minutes later, it felt like it dropped. And so it just was two massive news about the Seahawks coming at one time. It just created this massive effect of, well, what does this mean for Gino? What does this mean for the draft? What does this mean for free agency? What does this mean for the future? This has such a massive ripple effect that is kind of what is the most shocking and heavy thing, is what I feel right now, is just what happens next.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, like, I know we've all talked at different points on different shows about this being a big offseason for John Schneider and the direction this team is going to go. I know, Brandon, you and me have talked, and I've heard you talk on your show about maybe it's time to take a step back and then take two steps forward by setting yourself up for the new identity of what this team's going to be, instead of kind of recycling the same thing over again and hoping eventually it clicks. I'm starting to believe that may be the direction that they're planning on going here, that they may be taking that step back to then try and realign this team in what Mike McDonald wants it to be and how John and Mike want this to go going forward. Do you still have those same thoughts?
More than ever. Yeah. And I'm obviously very encouraged by it because I think that this is not just an issue that's been a 1-year problem. Of course, this to me has been a 10-year issue, and I will hammer this until people really want to hear this because it's the truth and nobody's been able to push back on that. And that's that every single year this team gets into the offseason, they tell you both with their head coach and with their GM, who do rarely speak, but then that means when the times they do speak, it's very important by what they say. And what they say is, we're taking a step back? No. We're going to rebuild this year? No. Hey, we've got to take a breath this year? No. Every year, to a man, to a word, the word contention is the word they use, and that's a very important word to use. That's not we're angling for the playoffs. Cardinals right now are telling you it's playoffs or bust. That's what that organization is telling you. That's what they're trying to set their fans up for as far as here's your expectations. They told us contention for 10 years, and you didn't even barely get into the playoffs. Or if you did get in the playoffs, you barely won. If you really did win, it was really against kind of weird factors like sub 50-degree temperatures or Josh McCown on a blown out hamstring through half the game trying to almost beat you with the Eagles after they lost Carson Wentz in that game after the first quarter. So you've been off. Your calibration is off. And that's my big issue here is that's the thing that seems to me to need to get corrected most, because when I look at teams, interested to hear your guys' thoughts on this, but when I look at teams that go wrong, my thing that I think I take away from is the number one thing that is what makes them go wrong beyond bad ownership or a stupid head coach or they don't draft well. It's that they misidentify where they're appropriately at as a team to when to make the big swing, when not to make the big swing, when to take the step back. And that's why it's so important to me.
Mike, what about you?
Yeah, I think the best example of what you just talked about, Brandon, is the Super Bowl champions. The Philadelphia Eagles may be the best team in the NFL at realizing where they're at and how close they are, or how close or how far they are. A lot of teams would have kept trying to make it work with a Carson Wentz. They knew when to pull the plug. A lot of teams would have kept trying to make it work. Like Doug Peterson was fired, I believe, less than 3 seasons after winning the Super Bowl, or right after 3 seasons winning the Super Bowl. Can you imagine like if the Seahawks did that with Pete Carroll? And I believe John won almost right. Like it'd be insane. Like it's a very different city, very different vibe, and how he runs his business, his team, the way that he runs it. And it's starting to really work right now. But I just don't, maybe it's just a little bit of a cutthroat mentality, but they know where they're at. And I think Brandon nailed it. There has been a very big divide between what Pete and John have told us essentially since our Super Bowl loss of how close we are and what we needed to get back to where we are now. And I don't know if there's been that moment where we really have felt like we are a Super Bowl contender. And it seems like more often than not, the moves that are made end up backfiring. And it's not this crazy drop where we lose 4 games and all of a sudden, we've earned the right to get Devin Witherspoon at pick 5. That was all the trade with Russell Wilson. We haven't had that season that has really put the feet to the fire of this front office. It's just been the slow, gradual decline where we're just stuck in that quicksand. And whether it's baseball, whether it's the NFL, or whether it's MLB or NBA, you don't want to be in this purgatory that the Seahawks feel like they are. And the DK moment can be that this is it. It's kind of how I feel like it is for John. And to an extent, it might be it for Mike. Like this is a huge moment where for the first time in John Schneider's career, he gets to build the team 100% in his image with the coach that he picked. Like this is essentially his second chance after the Russell Wilson trade and after Pete Carroll. And so you really, really have to hit it right now. And all the good stuff that comes from potentially trading DK is on the table, but so is all the bad things. And so this feels like the edge of the sword, the tipping point in John Schneider's career with the Seahawks, and maybe even a little bit earlier than expected for Mike McDonald.
It's interesting because, like you were kind of alluding there, Mike, the Eagles have this really good concept of when they know they're in an ability to contend and when they're not. And, you talk about from that Super Bowl loss, there was at one point, and it was the 2017 season when we didn't make the playoffs. And there was the whole Jay Glazer report came out before the last game of the year against the Falcons, I believe it was, that, hey, Pete might, Pete might be done. Like he might be forced into retirement. And that was also the last time Paul Allen really was around, RIP Paul Allen, but he put feet to the fire. He's done that numerous times when he was the owner of the Seahawks. And ever since his passing, there's been kind of almost like a coast mentality with this team. And I think it's because, Jody is involved, but I don't think she carries the presence necessarily the same way John or Paul did. And you've let John kind of run this show with Pete, and now you're seeing exactly what you're talking about. This, and same with you, Brandon, this miscalculation of where you really are, where this roster is really at, and how to actually get it back to where it is. And it might be the fact that Mike McDonald has now come in with a fresh viewpoint and gone, yeah, not really, guys. You're not really where you think you are. If you want to say what you want to say and say we want to be physical, we have to do those things. And that was the one thing I found refreshing about Mike McDonald, is how he turned this defense around and did make it a physical defense again. And it started to get that attitude and that swagger back to a point of, we are a physical defense. You're not going to want to play us. And he always uses the term of, we want to dictate to teams that play us how they're going to play on our terms, not the other way around. We're dictating terms to them, and that goes on offense and defense. And I think the way they've constructed this offense, as we all know with this offensive line, you can't really dictate terms to a defense when your offensive line is literally a wall of Swiss cheese. It doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. A couple of points just on top of what you guys just brought up there too with this. Number one, Michael, I think you'd agree on this. Not seen a lot of cutthroat from this organization, have we? I mean, they release a player, it's almost usually a year late rather than a year early. So that's been a thing that's been missing through this point. And a part of why the identification is so important is because it instructs your philosophy on that year and your approach, the contracts you give out, how aggressive you are. And so that's my issue with making this step back too, is it prevents you from also doing the thing they've tended to do, which is rob from tomorrow to suit today, take from tomorrow's cap to make today's cap work. We already got voidable years. We're plying on to next 26, 27. We're already starting to put some load onto that. I don't know if I like that for a team I'm not sure isn't contending. I don't think that flavor savors in my mouth. So I think I'm more apropos on this again, coming back just to your guys' point on this. And you mentioned ownership, Bryce. Another good point on this. You don't want ownership coming in the NFL all the time. You want them coming in at precise moments and wielding a great gavel. They did it with Coach Carroll a couple years ago, where I don't think John could have made that call or wasn't empowered to make that call. Now this is where she needs to come in with her gavel, in my opinion, this offseason, to say this very thing that I'm proselytizing about, which is to say, hey, step back. It's okay. John, your job's not at stake here. Don't let your decision-making be instructed by that. Let's take this patiently back a step and take a lay of the land and get this figured out right.
Yeah, going back to the Eagles and Bryce, I think my first time I was on with you guys, we talked about how the Eagles are a blueprint. And we talked about one of the 4 factors is the ownership as well, right? Jeffrey Lurie is not Jerry Jones hands-on maniacal, where he's burning everything behind him when he's seen sunlight looking forward, but he is hungry to win, and he's willing to do and allow Howie to do what is needed to do. Oh, we need to eat some money because this guy doesn't make it anymore. Go for it. All right, we need to trade half the farm for Myles Garrett. Don't be surprised to see the Eagles are in on this, right? If Myles Garrett ends up getting moved, you want that owner that is obsessed with winning, but has trust in his regime. Then Howie is on fire. There's a lot of misses Howie also has. John Schneider was once on fire. There's been a lot of misses he's had. He's also had a couple of good drafts recently with some certain stuff. So Howie isn't the greatest GM that's ever lived, and John Schneider isn't the worst GM that's ever lived. But like you said, we won't ever really know exactly right now what our ownership situation looks like and how much of the thumb is on from Allen, Jody, but it doesn't. The way John acts and talks in some of these interviews doesn't strike me as someone that if we go 6-11 or 7-10, that we're going to be hiring a different general manager. And not trying to be cruel, but I definitely kind of want my general manager to be feeling that right now, right? When's the last time we walked into a playoff, made the playoffs, and walked into that playoff game being like, I feel really good about our chances of winning this game. When's the last time we had a home playoff game with fans, right? That is how long it's been. You take away that 2020 weird season, it has been a long time, since over half a decade, since I woke up on a Sunday in the divisional round being like, I really think we got a great shot to go to the NFC Championship game. And that is where you need to get back to. And hopefully Jody and John, and I think the big factor here is, what does Mike bring? How much of a voice does Mike have? you haven't really seen an article. I know John Boyle had a really nice article about Mike Macdonald and just kind of the end of year 1 into year 2 and kind of the meetings and stuff with his scouting team. It feels like there's a little bit of that momentum. I think also is that just him going to the Senior Bowl. I assume Mike Macdonald was at the Combine. Like, it feels like Mike's got his feet under him now, and I really hope that he kind of takes a good stranglehold on this franchise and brings in some of that Baltimore way and that Michigan way of, we're going to kick your ass in the trenches, and we're going to be here, and we'll see you in the divisional round, and we're going to try and get to the conference championship and the Super Bowl every year. That's what I just want to get back to.
It's interesting to me because when I look at some of the terms that they've used in this offseason, we want to be physical. Even in Kubiak's press conference, we want to be physical. We want to do this. We want to, again, dictate terms. The way this offense, for example, is not constructed to do that. You're not. You've put more allocation in your skill position than in your offensive line. Outside, yes, they've made draft picks. Yes, we've gotten Charles Cross and we've gotten Abe Lucas, who we finally actually might have healthy again, which will be a nice change since his rookie year, really. But you haven't made that commitment to being what you say you want to be. And this is kind of one of the ongoing things from the Pete Carroll and John Schneider era was they'd say they want to do those things, and then they'd go allocate money in the wrong spot to do those things. So when we talk about this DK Metcalf situation, I think DK is a great player. I love DK Metcalf. I don't think DK Metcalf is worth top 5 receiver money like he may be looking to get, because when I think of those guys, whether it's Jamar Chase, AJ Brown, Justin Jefferson, those type of guys, I don't put DK in that category. Like, I don't look at DK and go, DK can take over games. And that's the one thing for me. Like, if you're going to reset this franchise and you move off from a player like DK, then you need to make sure that you get that right, that trade value right, and then you do what you say you want to do and allocate that resource that you have now acquired to the area that needs it most, which is this offensive line. So that's freeing up salary cap, and now you can go get yourself a Drew Dahlman and a Will Fries from the Colts, and you reinforce that offensive line. I will be so much happier if they do that. But if you turn around and trade DK Metcalf, and then you turn around and go get another receiver, and you spend it on these skill positions and you don't allocate it the correct way, I'm going to be pissed. Like, then what was the point in all of this? Like, you haven't done what you say you wanted to do and move that direction. You basically are doing the Albert Einstein thing of insanity is the same thing over and over again. We just continue with that cycle.
Well, and John's he can be a very stubborn guy in changing his ways. Look what he does with the running back situation versus what the analytic people you talk about what the Eagles do versus what we do. They seem to understand what the analytic people tell you about running backs and how you get the most out of running backs, when to go for a superstar running back, when to not try to be angling for that type of thing. So I think the same sort of situation here is a little bit at play.
So let me do this. Guys, give me your percentage on whether or not you think DK is back or DK will be traded. So I'll start with you, Mike. What's your percentage that DK ends up back in the Seahawk jersey with an extension, or DK Metcalf ends up traded this offseason?
I would say there's a 90% chance DK is getting traded. I think that if DK was, 6 foot, 205 pounds, I think it'd be hard to necessarily get in his production is what you've seen over the years. I think it'd be hard to get a top 50, top 40 pick, which I think if we're being realistic, that's probably what John is actually looking for. You got, you're going to say you want a first round pick and a player, but I think if you can get somewhere in that range and something interesting as well, I think that's kind of what we're looking at. But who knows, maybe you get the right general manager, the right franchise that's desperate and willing to think they're a player away. But DK looks the part. He looks like an asset that still has so much left to give. It's kind of a little bit comparison to Russell Wilson with the Broncos, right? The Broncos let us hear all about, oh my gosh, I can't believe you let us have a top 3 or 4 quarterback in the NFL. And we're all like, I don't know if you've watched the last year and a half of football. Like, there's still stuff there. And I like DK. I want to keep DK, but there's a lot of untapped potential that is being discussed. And that's where the value of that trade will be. Do we know if there really is untapped potential? That's that big question. So I think John will get something close to what he's looking for. I say 90% chance.
Brandon, how about you?
Yeah, I'd probably put it at 75-25. I do think that to me, there's a lot of this I think I might like even a little more where you guys may stand with DK, because I think some of this is about utilization, and that craptastic offensive line we put together is not set up well then to take advantage of the talents of a DK Metcalf, specifically the deeper routes, which require the pass blocking necessary to make those things go. We can get into the part before he got injured this year where he was third in the league in receiving yardage before he goes down really with a knee injury where he's never back to 100%. And that's the first year where you quantitatively have actually used him from the slot. You've used him in motion prior to the snap. Every other time it's been the old Carroll stale offensive here out at the X position and just line up over there, take that press coverage, and there's your double team over the top time and time again. And that's the part of this that does make it a bit, to me, a little extra complicated. I think there's the part that we're not talking about this though, that we should probably think about a little bit with this, is that you are moving your philosophy, which is true, Bryce, with this. If you're signing DK to this contract, then getting into a boat of now after next year having to pay two receivers at over $30 million a year. There's no team in the NFL doing that. The Bengals look like they're about to try to run from having to find themselves in that same particular boat. You're going to be run heavy. You're going to be defensive driven. Does it make sense philosophy wise? And that's the part I've come back to a little bit with this too, is I don't think you do that. No matter what, just about almost on that basis alone, 60 million for your receivers and your run heavy, your two tight ends, you're in 21 personnel and 12 personnel so very often. It gets tough on that one.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of where my brain's gone to it a bit, guys. I'm more of the 80-20 that DK is gone versus he comes back. I'm kind of in between both of you, actually. And part of the reason for that is exactly that. Like, I look at I've done extensive study on Kubiak and this West Coast scheme and what it calls for out of its receivers, especially because I started to think, hey, we've hired Kubiak. How does a DK Metcalf fit into that offense? Because when you look at the receivers that the San Francisco 49ers have had, and the Sean McVay Rams have had, and even the Minnesota Vikings have had, their big receiver or their big physical receiving threat is generally their tight end, George Kittle, Tyler Higbee, Hawkinson. Like, those are the guys that really are the focal point of being their big physical receiver in that offense. And then the guys that they have that are outside playing the X and Z really are guys that create great separation. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Justin Jefferson's a bit of an anomaly, but even you look at Addison, you look at, Debo and Ayuk and these guys, like, Jawan Jennings is a bit of a anomaly, but even to him, he gets still really good separation. DK gets separation, but it's vertical. It's not quick twitch off the line kind of, I can create separation, sit in those zones and stuff. Like, he can run the routes. He has routes he runs exceptionally well. But you think of when DK was at his best was in Brian Schottenheimer's bomb it away offense with Russell Wilson's moonball, where he could just outrun people down the field. Teams took that away with the too high coverage. And to your point, Brandon, like, they finally moved him this year, and he started to see some of that, hey, slot action and getting on, linebackers and in those mismatch areas. And you did start to see it, but you're right. Before it was, hey, go stand out there on your island, and if they bracket you, you kind of got to go make a play because we're going to still throw it in that general direction. I just don't know if he fits where I look at a guy like JSN. JSN fits better into the style of offense. If they're going to go run heavy, they're going to go 12 personnel. JSN can still create mismatches for himself because he is such an excellent route runner and creating separation. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But, one point in this is that 12 personnel and that 21 personnel, like, you don't have the room to play 11 anymore and have 3 receivers on the field because it's just not in that style of offense. Your third receiver is generally your tight end, who is your better, George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson, Tyler Higbee. They've all been huge factors in this style of offense. So maybe if Seattle does make a trade, it's with the Raiders because, that's been a team that's kind of been talked about. And maybe it's us getting a second and Michael Mayer back in return to help fill out our tight end room. That would be something that you could see potentially happening.
Yeah, I think your point about the receiver archetype of this offense is very true. I also go back to the story as well when we had Mike Holmgren running a little bit of an earlier iteration of this very same offense. And one of the reasons that you got rid of Joey Galloway back in the day, who was a very good receiver and very productive for you out the gate, was Holmgren would literally have those receivers counting the number of steps on routes. And if you have a guy that's just running, baby, I'm just running. It doesn't align you right up as well. And the change of direction, we do know with DK, the 3-cone stuff. Remember that part with the combine, people come in and forget is everybody remembers the speed and the 1-4-5 10-yard split and the 4-3 at that size. But the 3-cone was also what allowed him to get dinged down. That's change of direction, which is also what you need out of this offense. Short routes, quick change of direction, quick separation, contested catches, things that aren't necessarily at the forefront of the game on DK.
And things that are going to make JSN absolutely lethal in this offense.
Yep.
And he definitely needs help as well. And if we trade DK, it's not going to be him and Jake Bobo. I know that's the joke going around right now and stuff, but there is, yeah. And this is not a wide receiver draft, which I know we're going to get into the draft here. This is not a deep one. And John Snyder even kind of acknowledged that in his interview today about the receiving class not being that deep, but the guys that are in that top 50 range all really fit. I mean, McMillan, maybe not at Arizona, but even then, big body, you kind of are interested in him. But Matthew Golden, Luther Burden, Emeka Egbuka, those are guys that look like Shanahan, McVay, Kubiak style receivers. And it may be weird for Seattle Seahawks fans not to have a big body number one guy out there outside, but maybe this is better for what Seattle's trying to do. Again, if they can reallocate those resources to the appropriate areas.
Yeah, you guys have to explain the because the people have brought up to me on the Emeka and on the Burden one. I'm going to have to wrap my head around that one a little bit already, because with JSN, you're already now going to be transitioning him into an outside Z receiver role. He's a slot guy to me. I'm wondering about the speed on the outside, so I've already got some reservations on that. With Egbuka and with Burden did like 90% of his snaps out there at college out of the slot. That's not changing at the pro level. So we're not running a lot of 11 personnel. Where's the room on these guys that are really slot guys, in my estimation? Because I don't think Egbuka's winning on the outside that very much often either. We end up with on just those kind of collection of guys. And I think maybe McMillan does fit because he's different from DK, where I do the change of directions better. I think the route running is better. I think the contested catch is better. There's some things with him. There's some things he doesn't have that DK has, like the pure raw speed, of course, too. But there's some offsetting factors there.
The guy for me, so there's two receivers, and we'll get into this. And one of the guys for me, if you're looking for a guy that can run the intermediate routes well and is a good route runner and has size, so you're still getting that size factor, is Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State. Mm-hmm. He's a guy to me that is almost a perfect fit in this style of offense, because he's going to give you the ability to get off, like you're saying, Brandon, get off that press on the outside if you need to, because he has the quick twitch, but he can still run routes, and he's fluid in and out of his hips, and he's going to give you some of that contested catch ability. But I agree with you. Some of the other guys you look in here, you're like, okay, how do you work outside? Because if a big corner gets his hands on you, are you going to be able to get off? I think JSN can. I think you saw JSN develop that a little bit throughout this season, especially towards the back half of it. But I agree again. Like, I think they're going to find ways to try and still get JSN into the slot. So now you need a guy on the outside that's a bit bigger that can still create kind of that ability in the offense for you to give JSN some spots, especially if you slide over and you run like a twin look with two receivers on one side and JSN's that inside guy. That outside guy can't be the same build as a JSN per se.
You're right. And the condense, you can condense down the split with JSN where you put him, but then the other guy on the outside has got to be on an X. He's got to be there as a true driver to pull the safety off the top with any of your route concepts you're running off the back end. If you have just a slot guy there who's also a 4-5-ish kind of guy, well, now he's not going to be able to threat that in the same kind of way, and you're a bit stuck there offensively speaking.
Yeah, you are, and that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think another guy to look at is if you're looking for that take the top off, if he's healthy, is that Jalen Royals out of Utah State. You're looking for that late guy. I know we were going to talk about him and stuff, but like that's that guy that really does feel like he could fit. And I don't disagree with you guys. We have not seen JSN or Emeka Egbuka get that opportunity on the outside, and maybe they aren't designed to do that. I do think it is really interesting. Both of them have, whether it's fortunate or unfortunate, they have been the number 2 to someone their entire collegiate career at Ohio State. And so there's been that clear outside guy, whether it was, Marvin Harrison or, I think the greatest wide receiver prospect freshman I've ever seen in Jeremiah Smith and stuff. Yeah. It's just wide receiver you. And so I'm interested to see, and then again, in the NFL of DK, I'm curious to see if they can do it. I'm a little bit bullish on Egbuka, but I do understand the reservations for sure.
Yeah. Okay. He's a good player though. I do like him. It's just that worry I have on the inside.
Maybe this is a grand scheme by John Schneider to get a draft pick next year so we can go get Smith and pair him with Geno. Cousin connection. I'm just saying.
Two more years. Two more years.
Yeah,
Jeremiah.
I was gonna say you gotta say maybe we'll get that long first rounder.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got to win the Heisman this year and next year, and then he'll be the number
exactly.
one. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so I'm gonna jump in here with one from Dogzilla Monster. He goes, gives us a donation here. Thank you, Dogzilla Monster. He goes, I plan to post quotes from John Schneider's chat today on 710. And so he did actually put one in here already, which is great, which is the one that I was kind of most interested in. And it starts with, here's a few clips. He goes, on DK, worst case scenario is we have a great physical talent back with us. We have a new offensive staff who's extremely excited about coaching him. We're obliged to go out and listen and see what people are willing to pay for him. So other than that, guys are really excited to coach him and move forward.
I see why you think that that's a little bit because he uses worst case scenario, but think about reading that as in the sense of him talking to DK Metcalf.
Right.
Who does he know is listening to every word of this interview
100%.
about what's being said. So I think that that's more about, look, DK, worst thing, you're coming back here. You've got an offensive coach that's excited about you. Yep. You play out the final year, especially with a compromise deal where we don't hold you on a franchise after this year. I think that that's how I've read into it. And I could be reading it wrong, but that was my sense on that.
Yeah. Worst case scenario, go earn $30+ million next offseason.
Right.
Another quote here. He goes, he's such an important part of our organization, our team, our offense, the philosophy these guys want to move forward with. So I agree with you. I think this is John knowing DK's camps, listening, and him going, okay, how do we, make sure that we're not cutting off our nose despite our face and saying something we can't take back. We'll say things that are going to make DK feel like he's still wanted here, even though we have all intentions in the back of our head of trading him. We're not going to let that be known.
Yeah. I mean, Josina Anderson says she's hearing the best thing. It's a third yesterday. It's like, go pound sand, NFL. I'm not doing that.
MWN comes in with, honestly, when I heard DK wanted a trade, I was relieved. Yes, it hurts, but I'd rather get picks and help the team for an overpay contract for a guy who doesn't want to be here. I don't know.
I don't think DK. Right. I don't think that's the case. I just think it was a clear situation of he has his number with his team, and Seattle is here's our number. And I think John is what makes John really good as a person and as a general manager is I think he's pretty upfront with these guys. You don't hear too much about this too often, and I think the number probably was a little bit shocking. And I think it was shocking enough that his agency, in that the thing that kind of bugs me in the tweet is when they say that DK Metcalf prefers to go to a contender, right? And like that's a shot. And so I don't know if DK actually believes that, unless there's more going on behind the scenes. I think that's definitely all right, you disrespected or you don't value DK to this number, then cool, we're going to play a little bit of, the political game on social media, and we're going to put a little jab in for you and we'll see what happens. And I think the Seahawks responded in kind when they said in their quote, I believe it was Brady Henderson that quoted it, and John echoed it today in a much more polite way once you hear it in person rather than a quote, we're going to do what's best for the organization. Like that, it's just a little bit of that tennis, the volley back and forth of what's going on here, in my opinion.
I totally agree. And we also have a new member joining the HawksZone Rundown. So Aussie12 comes over and joins. Appreciate you, man, coming over. All right. So outside of that, guys, let's give Tyler Lockett his due. So yesterday was supposed to be Tyler Lockett Day. What was one of your most iconic or favorite Tyler Lockett moments from his career?
Well, I think the one for me that stands out is going to be obviously the one against the Rams, one of the more entertaining Seahawks games we've had in recent years, albeit in the lime green, which I just don't like. But the rolling out of Russell to his left, extending the play, the guy who's all over the top of Russell somehow gets the ball out with a rainbow ball. Tyler, with no room in the back of the end zone, somehow gets the toe tap down and feet in bounds and touchdown and control. 3-part catch there, but that was I think what stands out to me, and just in general about him. I mean, the guys, we'll look at a lot of guys in this draft and be like 30-31 inch arms, and there's nobody on the outside in this league that's operating with those kind of short baby arms. It's not happening. And this is a guy that made a career on the outside with those short arms and not necessarily being Tyreek Hill like burn ability.
Michael, what about you?
He's just one of those guys that when we look back 20 years and someone says like, hey, who like represented the Seahawks? Who was a Mr. Seahawk, right? Like you're going to think of Tyler Lockett. Everything he did for the community, for the team as a player, it really is such a bummer that he was drafted just after the Super Bowl teams, because it would have been so cool for him to get to experience, an NFC championship game in Lumen Field or go to a Super Bowl and stuff. But some of those highlights, I think just that first game when he burst on the scene, you're like, whoa, pick 69. Like, wow. All right. This is cool. I think him coming back from such a severe injury at the end of that season, if I'm correct, I believe that was 2017 when he got hurt, or that might've been the year before, but it was just one of those, I think it was right after the Earl Thomas injury. And so just the vibes were really low and you're like, oh my gosh, we just lost Tyler Lockett for the entire next season. And no, he was there ready to go. And just, I think that 2018 to 2020, even 2021, but really that 3-year era where post LOB, Lockett and Russ just created magic every single game, win or lose. They just had it. And it was just so much fun to watch them play. I even remember in 2020, the Sunday Night Football game was the first loss of the Seahawks season when they lost at the Cardinals on Sunday Night Football. Lockett had one of those beautiful moon ball catches, and then he had the touchdown to put him up 2 scores late on 4th and goal, where just another one of those underrated toe tapping catches. And you just felt like, oh my gosh, we might really have something this year. And I know the wheels fell off and too high safety became the thing, but there's just so many moments where it's just like, man, we really got the most underrated receiver in the NFL.
Yeah. And, the one thing about Tyler, too, is just the person he was, right? Like you look at when Quandre Diggs breaks his ankle, who stays behind with him in, Arizona where it occurs? It's Tyler Lockett. Tyler stays there. Like he was just such a team guy that you were like proud that he was part of your organization, was a team captain and mentoring DK and, coming up through the ranks the way he did through, Doug and Jermaine Kearse, and learn from those guys in that era and carry it through. For me, one of my favorite plays was, I have 2. One was obviously the Rams one, but was against the Minnesota Vikings in the playoff game where Russ loses the snap, goes over his head. He goes, slides, picks it up, runs around. And where's the one guy? Tyler Lockett finds the weak spot sitting in the middle. Russ dumps it to him. And he takes it all the way down to the 3-yard line or whatever it was. And we throw the touchdown to Baldwin on the next play. And that ends up giving us the ability to get back in that game and get a playoff victory. And then the other one for me is the post against the Saints, where like he just was so savvy at finding his way behind safeties without them knowing. And Geno hit him right in stride. Like that was the thing. I look at Tyler Lockett and I feel, because I never got to watch Steve Largent, I feel like it's the closest thing I would have gotten to see in Steve Largent live. Is just the savviness, the person, everything. It's even though I knew it was coming, it was still hard to realize it actually had occurred.
Yeah, it's exactly what you want to hope for. And then getting these players, and so few happens. We're seeing it with DK, where it's so hard in this sport to hold on to guys for the entirety of their career for so many reasons. And so when you get to do it, you definitely celebrate that. I mean, it does sound like Tyler seems to be getting a lot of heat to go into the Raiders. So I don't know that necessarily his career is going to be done here. But nonetheless, it was an awesome career. And he's probably going to be, with DK leaving, that second-ranked receiver in Seahawks history for probably quite a bit of time, unless JSN plays his whole career here.
Yeah, exactly.
He's gonna look weird in the silver and black. He might look good, but it's gonna be weird looking.
Yeah, it's gonna be very strange seeing that.
It's gonna be very strange to see, because I think that's exactly where he's gonna head up. So, guys,
Sherman and Niners was pretty bad though. Sherman and Niners.
Was gosh.
I don't know if I can get once that set a standard. I'm like, okay. And then Bobby and the Rams. We've had to see some pretty bad pictures recently.
And speaking of that quickly, Bobby got a contract extension or re-signed with Washington, which is great because he's still playing it at such a high level out there. And I'm just happy to see Bobby still doing his thing. And yes, I get he's not a fit here, but it's still great to see him mentoring and doing his thing the way he's doing it in Washington there.
And have a real shot at going to the Super Bowl next year. Like that's pretty cool for him.
He's going to have a little bit of the LeBron argument on him as far as on the inside linebackers all time if he continues to be able to play at this level so long, where it's like, okay, you don't have necessarily the Kuechly wow factor of the 5-year run, but you've got this long period. And then does that not I've maintained for a while, even going a couple of years ago, where he had cracked top 5 easily all time. And maybe he starts to even raise up that list a little bit more with this kind of longevity.
I totally agree with you on that one, Brandon. For me, like I'd say the year before he went to the Rams, for me, he cracked the top 5 of all-time linebackers. And then seeing what he's been able to continue to do, I think we're now talking top 3 in that category, potentially, when it's all said and done. But let's move on to this, guys, because we want to get our mock drafts in. Let's go into our draft crushes. So, we've been able to watch some of these guys. We've seen them at Senior Bowl. We've seen them at the Combine. I know all of us are kind of some draft nerds here, and we like to dive into the tape. So for each position, give me a guy that's one of your draft crushes. We'll start with offensive line. So, Brandon, I'll start with you. Who's one of your O-line draft crushes?
Well, definitely, I think Mebo's been the one that's been everybody's talking about. So, I mean, that's kind of easy. I think Arisay or Mebo being taken at 18 to me would be sort of a meat and potatoes kind of pick, offensive line that have caught my eye. As far as just it's like what you were going to do last year. I've maintained that if JC Latham was there when Byron Murphy was there, we would have taken JC Latham. And that this, in both of these two guys, is essentially the JC Latham. You typically get the right tackles are like 310. These guys are 325, 330. I mean, they've got the beef, especially Arishay's as wide as a freaking 2 fridges stacked side by side. So you can put these guys in that place and you can roll them. And I think I feel good about the line taking those and you go right through the rest of the draft. And you're kind of like, you kind of can excel a little bit. So they're kind of lazy on my part, but you let me pick first. So I'm going to put you guys more in the pick on this one because I like the other linemen. There's a stack of left guards in this one that are good, that we could talk about that are fine in the second-ish round they're all pretty good that could have some really upside, legit, but also I don't know if I go full draft crush too either.
All right, Mike, give me a couple of your O linemen that you kind of have draft crushes on.
Yeah, arguably my biggest draft crush is Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State. I think last year he would have been a day 2 pick at left guard. And this year he came back to chase that ring, to chase that Michigan win. Didn't get the Michigan win, but he definitely got the ring. And halfway through the year, after they lost Josh Simmons in their Oregon loss, he had to move over to left tackle. And he went from being one of the best left guards in college football to being arguably, if not much of an argue, statistically the best left tackle in college football for the rest of the year. And his tape in the college football playoff against not scrubs, Tennessee's pass rush, which has a lot of NFL guys on that side, Oregon in the Rose Bowl against a lot of NFL guys, Texas against a lot of NFL guys, and Notre Dame against a lot of really good players and a really good defense with NFL guys. He absolutely stood in there and owned it and gave Will Howard and Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka all the time in the world. And then they also ran all over everyone. And I just think he might be the safest pick in the draft. He's not the sexiest pick, but he's a guy that showed he can even play left tackle. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's pushing to get a left tackle consideration at the next level. But I think you put him at guard, you're set for the next two contracts, his rookie contract and the next contract. I think it's a safe, knock on wood, you book it. He's going to be a top 5 to 10 interior offensive lineman in the NFL. And then another guy that I've been on is Gray Zabel. Just the versatility, dominated at the premier football team in the FCS level at North Dakota State, a national champion. Looked amazing at the left tackle spot. Sounds like he played really well at the Senior Bowl. I know there's a few people in the Seahawks community that have their concerns about him, but I think he's a guy that is a Swiss Army knife, and anyone that can play all the positions, he's definitely more of an interior offensive line guy. But that's another guy that I feel really confident you can plug and play. You can play right away. And I'm trying to remember his last name. Is it Mensch from North Dakota State that went to Tampa Bay? He's immediately become one of the top tier guys at that position. Yeah, Mock. Yeah, I'm not saying they're the same player, but just seeing that, it really does help you feel more comfortable about that transition to that level. I think you take either of those guys, and it's not sexy, but that's how you get division titles and home playoff games, is those type of guys protecting your quarterback.
When Zabel's dominating, and he dominated at Senior Bowl, that's the kind of guy at the small school that you're looking at the Senior Bowl with that heavy microscope, because he's the one with on tape. You don't have him against the competition to really get the measuring stick. So him just not only playing well, but dominating reps. I was hearing guys were like wanting to get second and third reps against him because he was doing so well against him.
So it's funny because one of my guys is Donovan Jackson. I've fallen in love with Donovan Jackson, watching his film and everything. I'd love to see him because I think he gives you a bit of a hedge too. If you take him, you have a hedge in case something doesn't go right with Abe Lucas or Charles Cross. If you have to move off one of them because the contract, whatever, doesn't work out. Another one for me, just based on this scheme, based how he tested at the combine, what I've seen on film, is Tate Ratledge out of Georgia. I think he'd be a great guard fit in here. He's one of those guys I think could play left guard, come in and really, set a tone. And he, started for a majority of that Georgia run. And another guy for me that's kind of more of a mid-round pick if you wanted to hedge against Abe Lucas's injury and bring in a guy potentially that can, be the next guy in case, but you don't want to spend a higher pick on it, is Ernest Green III out of Georgia. He, played in that Georgia scheme. He's good in the zone block. He's 6'4", 320. He can move. He's a guy that I think you get in the 4th round, probably like picks 80 to 120 kind of area. But yeah, I think he's another interesting guy for the Seahawks potentially, and one of the guys I've kind of grown to love in this process a little bit. So off of offensive line, let's switch to the other side of the trenches, guys. Give me a D tackle and a D end. I'll start with you, Mike.
D tackle, I really like Darius Alexander out of Toledo. I think, when I look at the draft, I maybe have it a little bit more optimistic than a lot of people do, because what I'm looking for is those ceiling guys. What's their potential? What's their ceiling? I'm more interested in that than maybe what their floor is, which sometimes I would question if that's where John's head is at. But I think lately with the best player available, it started to change a little bit. But when he is on, that's a special defensive tackle prospect. Again, kind of out of Toledo, kind of out of nowhere, but that tape looks explosive. I was fine. I don't think I was blown away by his combine, but I was fine with the way he tested and stuff. And I think this is at defensive tackle, you kind of already know it sounds like, Reed's going to come back most likely, and you got Murphy coming back year 2. I thought he had a very solid rookie year and maybe just didn't pop with the stats, but I think we saw a lot what we wanted to see out of him. And then Leo is just this special talent that we have right now in his prime, and he can move all over, where I'm not asking someone to come in and change the world, right? I want a guy to come in and just help be a part of that rotation. And if you can get a nice quartet on the interior with a Darius Alexander, a Byron Murphy, and then you got the veterans in Reed, and then Williams kind of really the star of that group, I can get really behind that.
Brandon, how about you?
And then go ahead.
Oh, you had the edge. You had the edge.
Edge, I don't know if we want to consider him an edge, but I kind of consider him a hybrid edge. No, not going to go Jack Sawyer. I am interested in him, but Jahad Campbell out of Alabama. I did a mock the other day with Dan on his show, and I had him going at pick 18. I think there's a lot of momentum that you're hearing about him probably not getting out of the top 20, 25. Someone said if he's there at their pick, that they would run his name up to the ticket. I think he is an excellent linebacker that might be an even better pass rusher at the NFL level, or just a hybrid weapon. And I want to get Mike McDonald his chess piece that really kind of controls the board and really creates that mismatch and that advantage that dictates things. And I think Jahad Campbell has some Micah Parsons to him, while maybe even being a better linebacker or in pass coverage. And I just think that's a guy, pick 18. If Mike really has his hand on this team and has a real say, don't be surprised if Campbell's the pick at 18.
All right, Brandon, you're up.
I'd go with Kenneth Grant's the guy that from the jump, my first mock I did was the first guy that a month and a half, 2 months ago, I was instantly on this guy as far as really liking him. When Daniel Jeremiah talks about him with Haloti Ngata comps, that's not just a pundit talking about an empty comp. That's the guy that was in the Baltimore Ravens front office when they selected Haloti Ngata. So him saying that and making that comp, I thought was pretty eye-opening when I already did really like the tape. That's a guy that I do listen to a lot when he speaks on this kind of stuff, because he's connected, and he's probably not going to maybe last. There's a good chance of that he gets picked, much like Campbell. And so there's a chance that he's not going to be there. But if he was there at 18, that'd be a run to the podium kind of player for me, where it's not a problem. It's a little bit of a cheat on my part to go there because he might not be available to us. So if you're going later rounds, kind of a 4th round guy that I think some people are sleeping on as far as just good value guy that I like is Nasir Stackhouse as a nose tackle that can get the job done against the run. And if you're getting that in the 4th round, a guy that grade A comes in here versus a guy that we took in the 4th round a couple of years ago who I did not like in Cameron Young, this guy's significantly better than that for the same place you're taking him in the draft at that point. So I would go to a guy like that value wise a little bit later on. And then the edge, This guy, I don't put many blue chip grades on the draft. I do first round grades. I don't tend to have a lot of those guys. I maybe got like 18, 19 first round grades. I probably have about 6, 7 blue chip grades. The last blue chip I think I'm going to put on is going to be for Mykel Williams. I think people are sleeping on this guy. And I think a lot of what's happening here is a little bit of where you can potentially take advantage. He was injured all last year. He had multiple injuries all last year in a year where he would have blown up, where he would have torn the top off the defense. He's fighting through injury, so the production is a little bit dipped. People are going to ding him for that dip. We should take advantage like we did with JSN when he had the hamstring injury in that final year and you're able to get him at 20. Let's jump on that same way if we had 18, and people are going to get too caught up in all these combine testing scores on guys like Pierce. This kid's a player. He's Jadeveon Clowney 2.0. And then not Jadeveon Clowney and the guy that was out number 1 overall pick, the guy that he's been as a pro, which has been a top end run defender who gives you some pass rush ability in addition to that, and a purified fit for this defense.
Yeah, like I love all of your guys. So for me, I went with my D end. I'll start with my edge. I went with Shamar Stewart. I really like his tape, and I like what he's been able to put forth so far in this offseason progress. And again, I think he fits along what you have here in Seattle. I really also like Mykel Williams as well, Brandon. Like he's another guy for me that is a crush of mine in this process. And I think you're right. I think there's a good chance that he may slip because of the quote unquote lack of production this year because of injuries. And you might be able to get a steal that way. Defensive tackle for me, and Mike, I know you're going to appreciate this one because you're an Oklahoma Sooners fan. Jordan Phillips for me. I think he's a guy that you can get later on in this, maybe in the second round. Comes in 6'5", 330, and that's something that they've been missing. He can clog lanes and create pressure. You pair him with Leonard, with Byron Murphy. He's a guy that's going to come in and I think be disruptive in the middle of that defense. And it also, I think, will allow you to play a little bit more of, hey, where's Leonard Williams going to line up, and where's now Byron Murphy going to line up, because they've got this cog in Jordan Phillips that is going to command 2 blocks potentially each time he's on the field. So those are my 2 DN guys. I'm going to go linebacker and DBs, and I'll start. So my linebacker that I'm really interested in, again, because I believe Ernest Jones is going to get signed, and all points to it from John's conversation today on 710, like, he's working out with the Seahawks training staff, coming off this knee cleaning surgery that he had done. And he even said, he's like, we want to get this hammered out pretty soon, which from my perspective with John, to what we were talking about earlier, when John says something like that, pay attention. It sounds like things are probably heading in the right direction. I'm interested in Danny Stutzman out of Oklahoma as a guy that you can come in. He's got some range to him. He mirrors kind of the ideal third down linebacker for Seattle. He's 6'4", 240. He can move side to side, but I don't think you have to take him high. I think he'll be there in rounds 3 and 4. Comes in, he can come in and play in some sub packages for you, but he's going to help out in special teams. And Mike, you got to see him firsthand watching all the Oklahoma games that you do. I know he's a guy you like.
Yeah, I've been, being an Oklahoma fan, I've watched every single snap of his career, and he was the heart and soul of a very underrated defense that got, didn't get a chance to really show itself because the offense has been so horrific the last 2 years and stuff. And so I think he is a perfect fit to come in there and to, spell Jones and spell Knight while also pushing them. And I also think the way he performed in the combine really makes him feel like someone that could be a real weapon and potentially in special teams. And just having a guy that's been really the captain of the Oklahoma defense the last 2 years, I think just having that character and that type of attitude and that type of player is really nice. And then on top of it, he looked so well at the combine. Like I watched every single snap of his career, and I was surprised how well he tested at the combine.
Yeah, I didn't think he was going to go that far. I was blown away by his times because I thought that was going to be a 4.7 special all day when he got out there. So
yeah, props
to him on that.
And then for me, for my DB, because I'm just going to kind of put him together. I know he's not going to be there because I think he's going to be a top 10 pick probably, or at least top half pick, is Jaheed Barron from Texas. Like, that dude is a phenomenal defensive back at corner. Initially I thought maybe when this process started, he might be a second round guy, but you've seen what he's done. You see how he tested, how he moved. Daniel Jeremiah talks how much he likes him. I think he's, he's 5'11", 195 pounds, but he can play in so many different spaces and you can move him around. He's basically almost like, in some ways, like another Devin Witherspoon in some respects. So I don't think he's gonna, be there, but if he was, he'd be a guy I'd be interested in.
I gotta ask you a couple questions on Barron. Then we get back a little bit like the equivalency to the slot wide receiver now to the other side. 29 and 3/4 inch long arms on Barron. We're T-Rex City at this point. He has 1 year of really playing to the outside. Most of the college career is back to the slot. Devin Witherspoon does not seem to be doing his best work on the outside. So you're sitting there, and he's going to go in the first 18.
Oh, yeah.
And we have a need for it. Do you feel confident at that point in kicking Witherspoon out, or do you feel confident in that the Barron's going to be able to operate at 29 and 3/4 inch arms with a 5'11" build on the outside at the pro level?
I think there's a better chance that Barron can play inside than necessarily playing outside. And I agree with you. Like, his arms are definitely a concern. I think the one thing you can do with Barron, though, that Seattle could look at is kind of what they did with Kobe Bryant in a way, where he may be there and you may be able to move him back to that safety spot if you don't, because Kobe is in a contract year. If you need to move off of him and you can't get one of the Malik Starks or Emin Wari or one of these safeties, and you take a guy, again, we don't think he'll be there, but I'm just saying in a hypothetical sense, Barron, for me, he gives you some versatility. I know the arms are kind of a scary thing, but watching him play, he seems to be able to handle himself better inside than I think he does on the outside. And I agree with you, Brandon. I don't think Witherspoon has done so well on the outside either. I think Devin might have a better opportunity of figuring that out than I think Barron would playing on the outside.
Yeah, just the thing I wonder about with that a little bit, because you have that combination. I don't want to move Witherspoon at this point. I like what he's doing in there and how they're trying to get a feel for them there.
So, all right, Brandon, you go. Your guys.
Well, Jihad Campbell would have been one of my guys, Michael. I think you're right in that there's a lot of people that feel like he can play off the edge. He has a very little bit of that in college. Now, Micah Parsons didn't have a lot of it as well at college, so this isn't the first time we've been on this road. I do see him more purified as sort of an inside linebacker. Edgerrin Cooper has been, to me, the comp that just stands out, as he looks so very much similar to that kid's tape from last year. Similar build, moves similar length. That's really my comp. He's the guy. If not him, I would go to Demetrius Knight. I like him better than Schweisinger, who some people have as the number 2 linebacker. I just think Knight is one of those just rugged inside linebackers, a kick your ass kind of player. Just chew on leather kind of type of cat. Let me get all the metaphors out, but he's just that kind of guy. And I love how he plays in that way. Corner wise, what about going about Tariq Woolen 2.0? The kid I watched tape on last night, I think you get him maybe 3rd, 4th round, similar to Tariq Woolen, Zaha Frazier. I think he tackles better than Woolen, though he does the shoulder tap special that Woolen likes to do. Not quite as fast as Woolen, but got some similar ball skills. Only the 1 year of production, so he's probably not going to go high, despite the fact he had a really good combine. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of interchangeable cornerbacks to a degree in this draft, in my opinion, especially into the 3rd and 4th round range.
Okay, Mike, what about you? Any DBs that stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering if you're going to talk about this player when you talked about Reek Woolen. Another guy that I think has some Reek Woolen good and bad potential there is Darian Porter out of Iowa State. That tape looks gorgeous. And then 20 seconds later on the next clip, it looks horrendous. But he looks the part. You saw it in those combine numbers. If you ever decided to move on a Reek Woolen and bring in another guy that could potentially do a lot of those things, under Mike McDonald's leadership, I like Darian Porter out of Iowa State.
He's fun.
Okay. All right, so let's flip back to the offensive side, guys. Give me a tight end you guys are in love with.
I'm going to go with one that I'm going to try to pick a name here a little outside the guys that are at the top, because I know Warren's definitely the one that everybody in the fandom's got a little, what's poking out of your pants there? I don't know. I'm going to go with a guy that I think I like as far as into not only as a tight end, but into sort of the fullback-ish role, and a guy that's just really caught my eye. A lot of these guys we're talking about that I like too at this price that we're speaking about. For instance, your Jordan Phillips. 20 years old, or Micah Williams. I'm really caught up on some of these younger prospects. When you look at them now, to be really lucky on those guys that when you can get them into that 20 years old, just turning 21 in June, we go, yeah. And that's what you give the Harold Fannin Jr. He didn't run the fastest 40, but the rest of the testing time numbers, especially the short area stuff and the change of direction stuff, was really good. He's a hell of a blocker. over 100 catches out there at Bowling Green, a guy that I think you could utilize in that fullback to H-back move tight end kind of role to fit in there with Barner. So I really like him. You draft this guy, you could afford to move off of a Fant to me in that way, or keep Fant and have him in there as your third tight end, either way. But I think you get him in more of a kind of a third round range, gives you a full skill set for the position, upside with that youth. And I love how he catches, and he's so much fun to watch how he moves. I've said it's like watching a cross country skier move with the football in their hands.
Mike, what about for you?
Yeah, I'll take the easy one. I have this guy as my number one tight end. I've had him since the beginning of the year. Tyler Warren had obviously a much better season. I think he had a lot more to work with, and I would absolutely love to have Warren. But I think the ceiling and the potential of Colston Loveland out of Michigan could be a really lethal threat with what Kubiak's trying to do. Does he fit that exact type of mold of that tight end? No, he's probably more of a giant receiver than a skinny tight end, but I still think that you can work with that. And I think there's a lot of cool ideas that if you give an offensive mind like Clint Kubiak with a guy like Colston Loveland, the tight end position a lot of times in that Kubiak system is really the focal point of that offense, right? And I think Loveland, again, pride of Idaho, local guy, like somewhat local, it'd be really cool to bring him over here. I think his tape in their undefeated national championship season is really special. I know Todd McShay is drooling all over him on his show right now, and I think he has even him as his number one tight end. But last year was just an absolute shit show for the first 8 games over at Michigan. And then something, obviously clicked. And at that point, Loveland wasn't there and stuff. I don't know if there's any correlation to that or anything. I think he was more so getting ready for the NFL. But I just think this is a guy that looks like what the modern NFL tight end might look like, even in the Kubiak scheme. And I'd love to see him in that role here in Seattle. And then a quick thing, I know you're just talking about Harold for a fullback. Do you guys think there's any shot that Cam Scatabo could be a fullback with the Seahawks?
The catching side of it and running the routes, that's the part where you really want this guy to be able to do that stuff and be a mismatch in that way. I'm on a linebacker, I'm on a strong safety in space. Can I exploit that matchup? And Cam didn't run the 40. Another guy that's a little bit like Stutzman, where he's really, I agree with all you guys' points on that, where you improved his stock hell of it on this. But likewise, I want to see Scatabo. I've been a little worried with Scatabo that he's going to run a 4.6.
Yep.
And I know that Fannin did his 4.7 with, but Fannin's a tight end that you're moving just more naturally at skill set. This is a guy you're taking as a running back, a pure tailback at that, and then asking him to become basically the tight end fullback. And that's where blocking. Where's that going to be with Scatabo too? That's an elemental part of this. The fullbacks in this 21 personnel look, you're coming downhill old school style, baby. This is John L. Williams. This is Leonard Weaver. This is
Max Strong.
Yeah, Max Strong. You're coming in clearing linebackers out of the hole. So you've got to have that kind of natural ability. He's got the size to do it, but I wonder that with Cam on those items.
If I was going to go, I'll say the guy that I would like to see turned into a fullback is Lampkin. I think he would be an ideal guy for a fullback.
He's fun as hell. He's so wild.
He'd be so good as a fullback, though. He's like 5'11", 290. Just send him through the hole. Like you said, hey, go find that Mac linebacker, clear him out of the way, and we're going to run right behind you.
It's where you
did I say?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, did I say fullback? I meant quarterback for Cam Scatabo. Did you guys see that pass in the Peach Bowl?
Got a gun.
Oh, man.
Got a cannon.
For me, guys, at tight end, I'm going to go with Mason Taylor. I watch him move. He's got good genetics, comes from an NFL family. We've seen how guys like that have panned out over the years when they've grown up in that, situation. And I think, again, the thing with the Kubiak system, if you look at the tight ends, and yes, they need to stretch that seam a bit, but they also need to be exceptionally good at finding those soft areas in the defense and sitting down and understanding what their role is there and running those over routes and those over option routes. And watching Mason Taylor run the gauntlet, even, like, he's just such a fluid athlete. He's so smooth. I think you pair him with an AJ Barner. I think, and I really like Harold Fanning Jr. for that exact role you were talking about, the Kyle Juszczyk role, kind of, Brandon, in this offense. I think Mason Taylor could be a move guy for you, and I think he's a guy that you could bring in, pair him with an AJ Barner, and you'd have 2 really good young tight ends moving forward. And in this offense, I think that's one thing you're going to need. Your tight end will eat up a majority of that third receiving option, catches that we've been so accustomed to being the 11 personnel slot receiver. It's going to turn into the tight end being that guy in this offense. So I think that'll be an interesting one.
Good points. By the way, with the Colston Loveland, I do think that he goes in the first round. And my bold prediction to that too, Michael, is that I think he's the first tight end that goes off the board.
I agree.
Denver just feels like the one to me that you're hearing a lot of heat around that. And that seems to be the sense where a lot of people think just it's no brainer that Warren's going to go. And Taylor, I like too in the second round. So I like him better than I have been as far as my fan and grade on Taylor. He's a good player too.
Yeah. And then one other tight end, just a quick shout out, Gunnar Helm's ankle at the combine was one of the stars of the combine for dogging that out.
Remind me back in the day of my pickup basketball days, dude. Just like,
yeah.
And the
those
fact
hurt so bad. You when you have, I don't know if you ever when you roll it, you got 45 seconds where it feels like you're in medieval territory and you're on the rack, and it's the greatest pain. You can never be in more pain, and you're sweating, and the sweat goes more, and everybody's trying to kind of get away. You know, you just got it looked bad. So yeah, shout out to him, man.
Well, and the thing that was so crazy about it, if you look at his RAS score, he was in the yellow for a lot of things after he did the ankle. So if he gets healthy and gets to do his pro day, it'll be very interesting to see where he actually tests with a lot of those things that he was doing with a bad ankle. So yeah, Gunnar Helm's an interesting one. Let's move to receiver and running back, guys. So give me one of each. I'll go first. My receiver is Jalen Royals, not a Utah State. I think he fits to an extent what we're looking for if we were to move off DK. And even if we're not, to bring in another receiver into this offense that can help, alleviate some of the pressure off of DK if he's here, and JSN, and it's not Jake Bobo that we're relying on. And I think he's a guy you can get in the second or third round. And my running back is Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. He's a big back, 6 foot, 225. He averaged 6.4 yards a carry, ran in that Big Ten, conference there where it's a lot of smash mouth football, and Iowa we know likes to run that stuff. I think he comes in, and I think he would be a great fit in Kubiak's system. And I think he's a good compliment because eventually you're going to have to make a decision on K9 and Charbonnet in the coming years, and you need somebody to come in and fill that role. If you're going to lose a Zach Charbonnet and decide to keep K9, you need that bruiser. Kenny Mack and K9 are not bruisers. You need that guy to come in and be that guy for you.
Do you worry a little bit about maybe the lack of explosiveness? Because that's the thing in looking at this offense that really, this is the thing I worry about with Charbonnet a little bit. There's kind of like it seems like to me the running backs typically that are looked at for the system are sort of those 1-5-2, 1-5-3, 10-yard split kind of guys. And this guy came in at a pretty he's like a 1-6-2, 10-yard split type time on that.
I think it'll be interesting because I think he might drop a couple of pounds from what he was at the combine for his pro day. Because watching his game film to what he did at the combine, he's a little bit faster, especially in that one cut. So I think for this wide zone with the one cut scheme that they tend to like to have at these backs, I agree with you, Brandon. Like his time isn't great, but I would be interested if he dropped maybe 7 pounds to see if he'd get a little bit more of his explosion, because what I saw at the combine and what I've seen on film of him didn't really match. So that's why I'm interested to see at his pro day if those numbers don't get a bit better.
Fair enough.
All right.
Go ahead, Mike.
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, so running back, I think he's this guy, plays for a small school. His name is Ashton Genty. I think he's a pretty good football player, runs for a few yards. Now, at the running back spot, I think Quinshawn Judkins. I think he looks the part of just an absolute physical freak, and I think his tape last year at Ole Miss was really impressive, and I think Ole Miss really missed not having his physicality and his style of running, and I think it affected them a little bit this year and probably cost them a college football playoff bid. And I think him coming over, understanding that Travion Henderson is going to be a top 50 pick, and he said, that's fine, I'll still come over. There's a lot of money involved, but still, I'm going to come over and we're going to win a national championship together. His tape against Notre Dame, this isn't like our Notre Dame from 10 years ago or 20 or 50 years ago that looks too slow when they play, a real NFL style players. This is Marcus Freeman's Notre Dame defense. I think it's a real deal defense, and he still ran all over them in the national championship game. And when given the opportunity, there was a few times that he really broke through, but he's that power back. And I also like Travion Henderson. I think if both those guys have a real shot to go in the top 50, 60 picks, I think they both can be feature backs in the NFL. At receiver, Bryce talked about a very underrated guy out of the Mountain West that's starting to get some traction. Another guy out of the Mountain West that nobody seems to be talking too much about is Ricky White. his stats were unbelievable last year, and they weren't as good this year, but they were still insane numbers. Last year's numbers look like literally you have to double check. It looks like video game numbers. I just think he's a guy that's not being talked about enough. I know Rob Staten has talked a lot about him. That's really the only person I've heard talking about him. I think this is a guy that you can get in round 3, 4 that, we might look up 2 years from now and be like, oh, Ricky White's our number 1 wide receiver. I think that's his ceiling.
Yeah, he just gets open and creates separation.
Yeah.
You get dinged a little bit with the 40, but to your point, I do have him as a late 3rd round grade right now. So I like Ricky White quite a bit. He's so much fun to watch on tape, and that's really what's got to measure out at the end of the day more than anything else. I love DJ Gideon's. He is the antithesis of a Rayshawn Jenkins, where it's all moves and not just getting downhill. And he's going to be creative, and he's going to have moves for days. He's a human joystick kind of thing. It's not all just holes open up wide from all the time. He's creating his own at times, but he was so much of a fun runner for me to watch. And I think he's also got the size, and then his combine kind of confirmed some of his explosiveness and speed as a prerequisite that I was wanting to see, in addition to just loving his tape so much. And then just one quick other running back, I mentioned a little bit of a different guy like you did with Travion, LaQuinn Allen. I think LaQuinn Allen's getting a little bit slept on this draft a little bit as a weapon type of piece. Travion Henderson, a Jahmyr Gibbs, this new weapon type piece running back, where it's not about the bell cow back ideology of prior. It's more about get him in those touches and get him in that little role, get him to 10 touches a game. But whoa, what a 10 touches you're going to get. And he can do everything from out of the backfield to catch the ball out of the backfield as well, just be a weapon in that way. And I like him quite a bit. My receiver, and this is a guy I'm going to be willing to go as high as the 2nd round, much higher, I think, than other people are going to be willing to go. I'm going to have him higher than guys that other people might have on their board, like a Luther Burden. And that's going to be Jack Besh. This is a guy to me that I turn on the tape. I fall in love with the way I see on the tape. I see a guy creating separation. I see a great route runner. I see a contested catcher. I see a yak guy. I see a guy that's also won just 1 year of production, which is the one part that gives you pause. But I see so many echoes of Cooper Kupp to this guy's game in an offense that you need this kind of player where he can be that Z kind of guy and give you those 2 components, especially contested catch and yak, which have been just missing from this offense here for the last couple of years.
No, I really like Besh as well. I think he would fit in again with this West Coast style of offense. He's a smooth route runner and would create separation for himself. And he's just savvy. You watched him at the Senior Bowl, even on that last touchdown play, just finding that one spot where Hennigan can hit him with the pass. I would be okay with that. And I think, Cooper Kupp's a very good comp for him, Brandon. I think that's a very, he's got, and that would be the worst team in the world for him to go to, in my opinion.
Oh, I'm so freaked out they're going to take him in the first round.
I'm so in the same boat as you. Him and Puka Nacua just give me nightmares together. That would, with a good quarterback.
Because Puka goes to the slot full time. They've got, and Kupp got to more slot by the end, but with this guy, you can Z him up and then just fully Puka in the slot. And it's like, oh, Lordy. I'm not. And then they're going to get the speedster on the outside with Tutu out there on the thing, and then have their specialty guy there to just keep the top clean. Ugh.
It's not a good thing. So we left the best position and the one we know Seattle is so good at drafting. Quarterback. So, Mike, who's your quarterback crush that you've kind of fallen with?
I believe that if the Seahawks trade DK Metcalf, that they're probably going to take that pick that they're going to get from DK and take a quarterback. And if it's early enough, I definitely think you're in that range where don't be surprised if it's Jackson Dart. But the guy that I'm going to talk about is who I think the Seattle Seahawks are going to take at pick number 50, Quinn Ewers. I think Quinn.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong, dude.
Yeah. So Quinn Ewers has had quite the journey. I think it's been talked about a lot, so we don't need to go too much into it. But there is that connection, whether it is something, nothing, or everything, that John Schneider made a comment about him. You even heard it today in John Schneider. He talks a lot about faith in interviews and stuff. So does Quinn Ewers. So does Will Howard, 2 guys that a lot of people are starting to connect some dots to possibly being the next Seahawks project or next quarterback. Daniel Jeremiah confirmed it earlier, and I believe Rappaport or Pelissaro confirmed it as well. The full groin tear or oblique tear, a very rare injury that you don't hear a whole lot about at the NFL level, especially at the quarterback position. His ankle looked rough, and his tape definitely, as could make some people like Brandon get a little sick. And then there's also tapes where I'll get a text from people that we all know and trust and love how they evaluate players, being like, wow, that is something special. His tape this year did not look great. You want to see some of his best stuff, go back and watch some of last year's stuff. Last year, young, inconsistent, but a lot of the wow stuff was still there. That mobility was there. This year, battling through the ankle, battling through the oblique, it looked like he was literally shocked putting the arm a few times. That being said, very successful, was able to handle the Texas situation, was able to hold off Arch Manning. That program speaks the world of him. Honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if they put a statue of him the way they talk about him. I am probably the biggest Steve Sarkisian hater that you're going to find. I think that they easily could have won the national title this year. I think the play calling that Steve Sarkisian does is malpractice. I personally don't think on 3rd and 8 you should have your quarterback turn his back to the offensive line. I probably wouldn't do that. And I've seen as many out route, little flat routes, and just the most boring, fade routes possible. There just wasn't a lot of creativity for someone that everyone thinks is a maestro. I just didn't see it. And so I would love to see Quinn Ewers healthy. Have we ever seen him healthy? No, but I would like to see him healthy. I would like to see him learn behind Geno Smith for a year, maybe even 2. I think that if there's ever a scheme in the NFL that's going to work best for Quinn Ewers coming into it, I do think the Kubiak, Shanahan, McVay offense is a great place, a safe landing spot. I think this is a draft very, very good for teams that are going to run the Kubiak, Shanahan, McVay scheme. I think there's a lot of those safe quarterbacks that are going to run it and run it well. And I think Quinn Ewers is one of those guys. Is he my pick? No. Will Howard is definitely my guy. I really like Jackson Dart. I have Quinn Ewers well behind both of them, but I think that Quinn Ewers is someone that John Schneider is going to fall in love with. And be ready, pick 50 or whatever pick we have for DK. Do not be surprised and have your trash can ready for half of Seahawk Nation if Quinn Ewers is in the blue and green.
The one other aspect of the Quinn Ewers thing that I do find interesting is the Mike McCarthy angle now. That he is training with Mike McCarthy. We know John's, love for Mike McCarthy because he had, was part of the group that brought him to Green Bay and so on when he was in Washington as well. I could really see that. Brandon, who's your guy? And, make sure your trash bucket's close to you on draft day.
I know. It's, the Quinn. I've made my peace of the Quinn thing. I have. It still makes my stomach unsettled, but I've made my peace with it. And I do wonder on the faith chart, when you do get a guy, though, that is like Dart, that's then a Mormon, where does it factor on that? Because there is the fit, but then it's not. Yeah, it's just another question that's kind of irrelevant to discussion. But
these are fair questions when you're going to hand the keys to the franchise to someone.
That's
and
true.
I think John looks at this, and probably maybe more so than other people. I think he really does look into those things, whether that's right or wrong. That's anyone's opinion, but that's where he's at.
Yeah, every guy's got their evaluation points, and that is what it is. They have faith in that, and that's been a reason they've drawn to it. But just a little something you wonder about with that. My guy's going to be Tyler Shock, in a guy that you get more 4th, 5th round, so you don't have to go a little bit more with it. I certainly do like Will Howard. Brutal combine throwing experience he went through, which isn't necessarily a death knell for him. But Shock is a guy you like his journey. You like that he's had to go through some resiliency. He's got the full skill set he brings. The throwing motion is pure. He should be ready to go if you need him to be ready to go and have him go out there. There's not going to be a lot of period of time with it being a little advanced stage. I don't think that knocks quarterbacks as much. I think he can make all the throws. I think he's a progression reader. One of the things I have problems with Quinn Ewers, and it's where I get back to at times with quarterbacks, is that you have arm strength or you don't, and you can process or you can't. I don't think that it really comes along with time. Different offense might help him, and everything you said about Sarkisian's offense, I'd back up. I hate that offense. It's little kid football offense in many ways. So it's not the best thing for Ewers. But with that said, at this day, I like the Shocks just come on for me in a big way with just 4th round, where you get a guy who's got a little bit more talent than you atypically would get there in the 4th round.
All right, so I'm glad neither one of you picked my guy, and he has literally been my draft crush from the beginning of this process. I really, really like Kyle McCord out of Syracuse. I think he fits the system well. He gives you an arm. He showed it this year at Syracuse. He can make all the throws. He throws into tight windows. He's not a great athlete, so you're not expecting him to be someone that's running the read option. But in this system, I think he is a bigger, better version in some respects of a Derek Carr, Brock Purdy, one of those guys that fits in the system. And, 69 or 66% completion this year, almost pushing 70 at Syracuse. And those were on passes of 10 to 19 yards, which this offense is built on, are those 10, intermediate built routes and the shorter routes. And he had a play action grade on PFF, take it with a grain of salt, of 73.2 off of play action, which is a good grade. Like, he threw for 4,100 yards and 34 touchdowns on Syracuse. This was after he went 10-1 with Ohio State and they moved off of him to Will Howard. He goes to a program in Syracuse and gets them up to being one of, the better teams towards the end of the year and winning a bowl game, beating Washington State. And you watched him and he diced up Washington State's defense. It wasn't anything special, but still, you saw him at Shrine Bowl. Everyone kept talking about how good he looked at the Shrine Bowl. Even in the workout at the Combine, you could see the rhythm. You can see the throwing. And to your point, Brandon, on progression, that was the one thing I was looking for from him in his tape. Excuse me. He is a very good progression reader. He can get through the reads quick, get the ball out of his hand. And he's a guy I think that you can get late second round or in that pick 50 range to the third round. But a guy that if you sit him behind a year behind Geno, I think you're going to get massive dividends in the long run, and you're not going to have to spend on it. And I think his track record, to a point, is better than a Quinn Ewers or a Will Howard, where there's a little volatility there. I think in the 2 years he started, he's only lost 2 games. That's the one thing for me.
I've got him right behind me, Shock. So he's neck and neck with Shock there for me in more of the fourth round, but he's a good player.
So question for you guys. Let's say, hypothetically, Seattle trades DK, and let's say they get close enough to where they decide, hey, we really value that 5th-year option, whether they get a late first for DK or they're really close and they want to package a little bit to get into that 5th-year option. Is there a quarterback? Let's just say it's pick 30, all right, Buffalo, right? Let's say, are you comfortable taking a quarterback at pick 30, or do you still feel you want to go? And I'll say caveat, Dart is still there at 30, all right, just hypothetically. All the quarterbacks other than Shedeur and Ward are there. Do you want to take a guy there, or do you want to go best player available and take a quarterback at 50?
My opinion is that the talent of a guy like Dart's not that much different of these guys we're talking about in the 4th round, first and foremost. And that what you're doing at that point is, we do know there's a history of John Schneider drafting poorly here from about that 14 to 2021-ish range. What's the big change he said that they made at that point? They went to more of the value-based structure than the need-based structure in their approach to the draft. What are you doing if you're stretching to take a quarterback extra high at that point? You're reaching for a need. So now we're unlearning lessons that we've already learned. That doesn't seem particularly very smart to me on it. The 5th-year option is a thing that gets mentioned a lot, and I think that it's something we got to put in context, a little bit of understanding that it's not really a good thing, the 5th-year option. If a guy plays well after 3 years, you're paying him. The guy's injured and beat up, but he gives you some flashes, and maybe you got 1 year here, but then the other 2 years he was injured, and now you're activating the 5th-year option. But then you look at what like a Justin Fields 5th-year option was going to be, $23, $24 million a year. So there's not a lot of savings. That's hitting the cap hard right on the front. What you're really going to run into is if the guy performs, you're going to pay him after 3 years. And you're going to have a hard time stretching even to past 4 year, much less get into that 5th year. And if you're getting that 5th year, it's usually because things have gone wrong, not right. So I tend to not lean too much on getting much value behind that 5th-year option.
No, I'm in the same boat with you, Brandon. I don't see the value in it. Like, you look at quarterbacks that have gotten to that point of needing a 5th-year option, with teams that have actually exercised it or wanted to or potentially could have. We're talking about guys that went in the top 10 that are extremely talented and at a point where their cap hit, they weren't still settled on that guy yet. Whether it was, a Mitch Trubisky when he was in Chicago and they weren't sure what they were doing, and then they finally moved off of him. Like, if he's a guy and he's playing well, you're like Brandon said, you're gonna pay him after year 3 because you're gonna want to drop his cap hit to allow you to put more pieces around him still. And so for me, like when I look at Jackson Dart, yeah, there's some things I like about his game, but I don't see a drastic difference between Dart, Shuck, McCord, any of these guys really in that bracket for me. Even Ewers to a point, because I can still take them in 2 to 4 in that round range. I'm still going to get the 4 years out of them potentially. And if I still want to start them in year 2, I still have 2 years to figure out if I'm going to extend them after year 3. It just makes more sense. I'd rather use that 5th-year option potentially on a guy that is going to be like an edge rusher that may come and blow out onto the scene. And I'm still not 100% certain at one point. I still want to have that option more than I do on that quarterback.
Yeah, the value
Okay,
is that I think in the other place of things with the value that what you're passing on as a player there to do this too. I think we're going to be definitely going, ooh, could have had that guy. And then you're looking back in retrospect going, quarterback may or may not be good in the draft. And all these guys, whether you like them or not, we'll all admit on this. These guys all have a pretty big risk factor on really reaching the upside that they tantalize with on tape. It's no sure things in this at all anywhere in this draft. And so understanding that, passing on that guy that's more of the meal ticket sure thing gets all that harder from my perspective, at least.
Yeah, and that's the other interesting thing is like if you do that pick with that that DK trade or whatever that is, in a sense, and we'll find out here in the next week what happens with Geno in the next few days, but like that's kind of starts that clock a little bit on John. And that's that question, if has he found a guy that he's willing to start his clock on, or if you take someone at 50, which is only a few picks farther back, but it just the narrative changes a little bit, as well as, or if you take someone at like 82, like you were saying in the third round.
I would have a problem if they did it like too, if they do they move a DK, they move a Geno, which in my opinion, you really should do one to the other at that point, because if you're moving DK, you're not probably contending anyway next year. And if you're signing a 35-year-old quarterback, it probably should be because you're going to believe that you do contend. So if that's the case, roll that way. And then if you want to reach on a guy in the first round, for me, a Dart or an Ewers or whatever the hell you want to do at that point, especially if you were able to do the smart thing, which is maybe get a future first round pick. And now into next year's draft, you can do the old Josh Rosen to Kyler Murray thing if you really wanted to at that point, and then you got kind of two swings at it at that point, so to speak. So I don't have a problem with it if they do those in conjunction, especially then because they're doing the thing I want to see, which is take the step back and understand the value in that.
Right.
All right, guys. So speaking of all of that and all those decisions and crushes that we like, let's actually get into a mock draft. So we're going to use PFF. So far, I found it's the most consistent with the rankings, and I've got it drawn up here. So the first one we'll do, guys, we're not making the DK trade. We will draft as Seattle's order is, and we'll go from there. And then on our next one, we will go into what could potentially be the situation for Seattle if they did trade DK. So I've got it set to turbo speed. We got all our picks, and we'll just go through this and see how it all goes. So we'll just look at the top. Travis Hunter off the board, number 1. Abdul Carter off number 2. McMillan 3. Wow. Where did our quarterbacks go? This
Cam Ward at pick 18, huh?
Cam
It's
Ward
going to be
is
hard to
still
say
on
no
the
to
board.
Cam at 18, man. I don't
know, man. Like,
down.
that's surprising to me. That's the first time I've ever seen that happen.
You might want to rerun it and see if it really rolls that way, because there's no way
That's a
Cam's
little
going to be
shocking.
sitting there.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you. We're going to rerun this simulator.
Sometimes
What
the
did
simulator-
Cam and Shador get busted for?
Sometimes the simulator smokes a little crack before it runs.
I think it did. That was a big hit. So we'll put the public PFF board kind of in the middle. Care positional value we'll put there. Draft need we'll put up. Randomness we'll put at the lowest. We'll do 7, and we'll do it on turbo. We'll pick the Seahawks, and maybe Cam Ward's there again.
I'm taking Cam Ward if he's there. I'm sorry, but sorry, not sorry. I mean, I don't. There we go. There he goes. That's
Wait. Yeah, there
Yep.
we go. Okay, so Abdul Carter went 1. Travis Hunter went 2. I could see that. Mason Graham 3. McMillan seems to be a sweet spot for the Patriots, which is always interesting. Genty to the Jags. The Raiders get their quarterback. Cam Ward. Will Campbell goes to the Jets. Brown goes to Carolina. Membu, pick 9, which again I think is going to be a realistic thing for Membu to be a top 10 pick. He's done quite well. Malachi Starks is off the board. Pierce is off the board. Warner's off the board. Campbell's off the board. Will Johnson. Donovan Izuraka from the Boston College Eagles is off to the Falcons. Mike Green and Burden's off. But this does leave us with Emin Wari still on the board.
no way. No way we take Amori there.
I don't think so either. I'm just saying it's a nice dream to have.
The tape does not match the times.
So
Yeah, the Cam Chancellor comps really annoy me, to be honest. He doesn't play like Cam Chancellor, so
Yeah,
that's just my opinion.
I've watched a ton of tape. I've done 2 different separate sessions on the guy to just do deep dives on him, and he's a good player. He's and Shamar Stewart's a little bit like this too, though. It's like, look, I get it if it's that you trust in your ability to get to that upside, but these are guys that are more about the tools than they are about the production you've actually seen on the field or what you're actually seeing from tape. And that's when you're taking a safety in the first round. Earl was a pick master out there at Texas. He was
Yeah.
ball skills for days. He was, to use your shirt that you're wearing there, he was Griffey Jr. in center field out there at
Yep.
Texas. So, that's not what you're getting with Emma Warrior, and we're about 6 spots off that spot where we took Earl.
So Minnesota wants to trade. We're not going to trade with them. I say we take Kenneth Grant.
I'm Grant guy on this one all day. Simmons is a pure left tackle.
Yeah, right here, like I said, I'm fine with Grant. I think Loveland's still there, so that would be the other guy I'd be interested in. But if we're trying to really build the trenches, then let's take Grant.
All right, Kenneth Grant will be the pick.
Could you imagine
right.
Grant, Murphy, and Leo Williams next year, man?
That's why I'm so on this. Is like I don't like Loveland. Don't get me wrong, I do. I'm on Loveland,
Yeah.
but it's just that the thought
So the
process is
pick
stacking
right after us goes Michael Williams to the
I didn't see
Buccaneers.
Michael Williams is on there. Hold on, I didn't see that. I want to redo.
After Brandon talked him up so
Yeah,
much.
I didn't see. He wasn't there. He was on the list. He was on my list.
Brandon
I
just
take
had
it back.
Brandon's
I'm
heartbroken.
begrudgingly being forward. The guys forced me into Kenneth Grant.
Yeah,
Bryce took the books.
I could. Yeah, exactly.
He's got his finger on the
screwed
scale.
Brandon out of his guy. Okay, so Mbuka goes, Stewart goes, Hampton goes, Golden goes, Simmons goes, Banks goes, Harmon goes, Alexander goes, Loveland there. Oh, frick. Loveland to Detroit. That's all they need with Laporta down there and Amon-Ra St.
That's
Brown.
unbelievable. Oh, my gosh.
Walter Nolan, Williams again, Jalen Walker to the Eagles, of course. Sorry about this. Still getting over a cold. Connolly gone. Shador Sanders falls to the second round to Tennessee. So they do get their quarterback. They just get him in the second round. There's Gray Zabel to the Jaguars. Demetrius Knight Jr., who I know a lot of people in the Seahawks really like. The Patriots. There's your guy right there, Brandon. Jack Bash to the Chicago Bears. Landon Jackson. So the 49ers went double edge. They went Landon Jackson and James Pierce.
I will be happy if the Niners do that.
Tyler Booker to Arizona. So we're on the clock now, guys. So now do we go to the O-line? Do we have a look at the O-line?
Take a
Yeah,
look
is Zabel
at it.
there? Or Donovan Jackson there?
Zabel's
Donovan
gone.
Jackson is there, and so is
Yeah,
Ezra. So is Jonas Sanavia, Wyatt Mullum. And remember, these guys are guys that are, like, I really wish they would do like just an tackle guard kind of category where you could just see them all. But I'll add that into here. So here we go. So I've added into this the interior O-line as well. Tate Ratledge is there. He's really the first true guard. I'm okay with Donovan Jackson here. I think if we get Kenneth Grant and Donovan Jackson, I think that's a really good start to this draft.
I think Ursery's got more upside than Jackson. I think Jackson's floor is higher than Ursery at the moment. So
Do you think Ursery can move into guard?
He's 330 pounds. Like I said, like 2 fridges stacked side by side. So he's got the width you like in there. He's got the power and he's got the size. And he's one of those youngsters just like the Mabu kid where he's about 20 years old.
You know what? I've done a lot of Donovan Jackson. I think we go with Ursery here.
You got Michael's the tiebreaker.
No, I'm fine with that. Obviously, you guys know how I feel about Donovan Jackson, but as long as I walk away with a day 2 interior offensive lineman out of the Big Ten that kicks some ass, I'm happy.
Michael, you're on the top of the fence right now. You got to jump to one side or the
Jump
other.
to a
brother.
side, Michael.
Go Gophers.
Gophers. There we go. All right. So we're going Gophers here. So we took Ursery there. And look at the Buccaneers, man. What a start to their draft. They get Michael Williams, and then they go and take Jack Sawyer right after us again. They're just rebuilding that defense down there in Southern Florida down there. Carson Schlesinger goes to the Broncos. Alfred Collins, of course, that's a great spot for him if that happened. All right, guys. So there's Darian Porter to Baltimore. There's your guy Scattaboo goes to the Detroit Lions.
Oh my gosh, that's a perfect fit again, man.
Caleb Johnson, one of my guys, goes to the Eagles. Nah, that's a nice landing spot for him. Donovan Jackson made it all the way to the 3rd round. So looking at this, Mason Taylor's off the board, Elijah Arroyo. I think Jalen Noel, damn you, Cincinnati. Took Jalen Royals from me. Okay, so what do we think, guys, realistically here? 3rd round, we've addressed both sides of the trenches. Do we go
Let's look at wide
Receiver, do we go
receivers.
with the tight end?
Let's look at wide receivers and let's look at the tight ends.
Okay. So I'll bring up the wide receivers. So Tez Johnson, Trey Harris, Isaiah Bond, Pat Bryant. Like, wow.
I mean,
Bottom fell out.
Savion Johnson's kind of fun in the third round. I mean, I don't want to take him second, but late, you're talking late third round, and that receiver class falls completely off the cliff after this point for sure.
Let's look at
but
the tight end room though, just because I want to see if we've lost anyone in there. So Terrence
Especially
Ferguson, there's Harold
especially if we're going to run
Fanning Jr.
12 personnel.
Yeah, I would be okay with Fannin as well here. So I've got both those guys as basically fairly equivalent grades on my board with Savion Williams and Fannin, where I've got them slotted. And Savion's got a lot of some of the similar stuff that you get with Jack Besh with the contested catch yak stuff.
Yes.
So there is that, but I love them both. They're both really fun. They both would be like, you got a my guys list. Both of them would be on my guys. So I'm flexible. I like Trey Harris too, by the way. So
okay. So remember, this draft, DK is still a Seattle Seahawk.
Okay, so we're operating like DK's a Seattle. You still need a
Seattle
receiver
Seahawk,
though.
yes.
Still need a receiver though at that point because Tyler has moved on. So there's still a bit of a need, and especially with Savion because he could work in kind of that gadgety role, especially. But I'm torn here, gentlemen. I'm gonna have to let you guys decide on this one.
I like Harold Fanning Jr. because I think there's still a chance Noah Fant is released. And that tight end room needs more help right now, I think. And I think we can still get maybe a Ricky White later on that can come in and still push a Jake Bobo and give us some of those, reps we're looking for in that receiver role. So I think it's either Fanning Jr. or Terrence Ferguson here.
Fannin and Barner is a fun combo in 12 personnel. That's something that for the next 3 or 4 years, I'd love to watch.
Okay.
I'm with it.
We're going with Brandon's guy since I made him miss out on his blue chip, Michael Williams. We're going to give him Fanning here.
You snickered me, man. You snickered me.
All right. So we got Fanning here. So there's Sebastian Castro. Wow. Trey Harris. Terrence Ferguson goes. All right. So the top guy sitting on the board is Dylan Gabriel, according to the rank. I really like Damian Martinez as a running back. Savion Jones is an interesting edge prospect to me. So to recap, we've got a top D lineman. We've got a guard. We've now got a very good move tight end for us. Do we take a look at who's there at quarterback? We're now in round 4.
Yeah.
I think somebody's there for Brandon.
I know. I saw
Actually,
you.
all of our guys are there.
All the guys are there. I can sign me up. You can sign me up for McCord over Shock. He doesn't have the injury history, and the talent I think is very similar there. Even Ewers is not that. I'm not in the when we get to the 4th round with Ewers, I'm way better at that than the nightmare scenario Michael was painting with, late 1st round or 2nd round. That's just the stuff that gets me that gives me nightmares. But this 4th round, it's a penny stock that could hit, and if it hits, it's going to hit big. So there's no doubt.
I think out of those 3, I think the one that has the higher hit percentage could be McCord.
McCord's got the hit percentage. Ewers got the higher upside. So that's the decision making there, really. I think.
So Ewers won't be here at this point in real life. So barring something really bad, I guess. But I think, like you're saying, if this was pick 80, 82, I'd be a little bit more nervous about the floor versus the ceiling. With at this pick at this round, I would take the guy that has the higher potential. That's my personal opinion.
And I think it's Kyle McCord. So we're going to go with McCord here. All right. Well, the 49ers took a quarterback because they can't trust Brock Purdy, and they need another small guy, and they went and took
for the Brock Purdy of the
Dylan
draft.
Gabriel.
That's the Brock Purdy of this draft, man.
But they took Damian Martinez, those bastards. Okay, so when we look at this, and somehow the 49ers actually screwed up and forfeited a pick. Right in the middle there.
I love it. This is fun.
This is fun. The 49ers forfeited a pick. I'm all for that. All right, let's look at our receivers, guys. And Ricky White is there. But do we take him this early, or do we try and address another need?
He'll be there later on.
All right.
Scroll up on the receivers. Yeah, none of those guys I like. And then let's just look at the pure value of the board here. Roll down the value of the board if you can for me a little bit.
I like Tyler Cooper.
Stutzman.
There's my guy, Danny Stutzman.
Keep going a little bit.
Hey, Brandon, have you had a chance to look at Tonka?
I haven't.
What?
No, not yet.
Man, that South Carolina defense is really fun. I know he had a decent combine and stuff, and him and Kennard did a lot for that team.
They had a lot of guys on that D. So did I can't believe Mississippi wasn't better than they were. I look at them like you have Dart and you have all these guys on that defensive line. Why weren't you better? It's almost kind of like a bit of a warning sign for me. All right, let me make a case as you guys scroll to the top for the value play on this. Let's go get the best center in this effing draft.
Okay. So right now the best Jake Majors is right there.
No, it's Seth McLaughlin.
I wanted to see if I could fool you, Brandon, and get you to that.
It's the injury is the only thing that allows this guy to last into the 5th round where he'd be lasting. And I think he can come back from that kind of leg injury. It's not going to be a decimating one. He ain't a skill position player you're worried about a 40 time with. The guy's a mauler. He's a bully out there, and he's got mobility. It's not a Ragnow type center where it's all about just them getting into a fight every play. It's about he can get out in space and move. They had this guy pulling out in space from the center position, which is one of the harder things you can ask a center to do. He did it. Fits to the mobility of this scheme. I'm with it all day long.
Okay.
Hit it.
All right. So we addressed center. Quinn Ewers finally went, and he went to the Buffalo Bills. Interesting. Good for you. Cleveland took a quarterback. All right. So now we're sitting here, guys. Tonka's there.
Yeah, I would like to look. If not Tonka, I want to look at the wide receivers.
Yeah. Okay. I'm with Tonka too. If you guys are sold on him, I'm with it.
Ricky White's still there.
See, I told you be there. We got him there. We could still.
I think we take him. We need that receiver.
Do it. I'm all for it. That's my guy.
Okay,
that's one of my ride or dies for this draft.
Okay, so we got Ricky White. So Jake Majors is still there. Look who's still sitting there as a guard. That's surprising to me.
Did the Seahawks meet with Slater, right?
They did meet with Jackson Slater, yes. He's another guy that I'd be interested in this late in the draft because we're now in round 6.
And Caton's pretty nice too.
What's the interior D-line look like? We didn't even address edge. There's nobody in here that I'm really like. The edge group's decimated at this point.
Yeah.
Safety. Craig Woodson's interesting. So is Hunter Wohler out of Wisconsin.
I've got a little higher grade with Caton Crawford with Nevada.
Yeah, he's another guy too.
I'm a little higher on him, but back over there, we had and the linemen that we have available there are pretty tantalizing.
I think Miles Frazier or Jackson Slater here. I think
I feel like the hype I'm getting off Jackson Slater is just like there's a sense you're getting from him on some of the upside here, and taking kind of a big swing on that for a guy that could have some real ability and potential. It's kind of, if we're talking about really getting this line fixed, we don't know what they're going to do in free agency coming into this thing. I mean, you'd come out of this draft after you took Slater at that point, feeling like you fixed it. I don't want to push too hard for this. I'm open to going other ways with it, but
I think Slater makes sense. We're in the 6th round. We've got basically one pick left after this. I say you take the swing because if it hits, great. If it doesn't hit, you took a swing in the 6th round to address an area, but you've already addressed it earlier, like we have. So now this is like a luxury pick for me, and I think Jackson Slater can be one of those luxury pick guys.
It's all about lottery picks right at this point.
So we'll go Jackson Slater. All right. Craig Woodson's still there. Fairchild.
Smale Munden right there.
Yep. We haven't addressed linebacker.
Haven't gotten linebacker
there. Do we go with a linebacker here?
Yeah, I think we do need a linebacker. I think whether that's in free agency or in the draft, I think Seattle's going to add something there. It might be undrafted free agent, but at this point, it's kind of in that same realm. And yeah, give me the guy out of Georgia.
Yeah, I've got a 4th round grade on Smale Munden. So if we're pulling him in the 7th, Jalen Walker's horrible. Cain Madrow's like a 6th round kind of guy. Greg Penn, same way, 5th, 6th round guy.
It's a hell of a name too,
Oh, it's great. Yeah. And look, he's going to work with this defense because he's worked in the Georgia system. This is the other thing about Michael Williams I want to say when it comes to Georgia defenders. This is the thing we learned about with Trayvon Walker when he was coming out and they were talking about that. You come out of that defense, you're not going to have the production. Jalen Carter didn't have the production. Yeah. Nolan didn't have the production. Trayvon Walker didn't have the production. They run a lot of blitz games and simulated pressures and stacked boxes. But hey, what does Mike McDonald do? So this guy is going to be very comfortable in the showing the blitz looks, feinting when you're not coming, when you're blitzing, having the technique to actually get home on the blitz because he is explosive in short area and whatnot. So I think he'd be a great fit too with the defense.
Okay. Well, we'll take him then. All right. So this is a draft where DK is still a Seattle Seahawk. Damn, we really struggled according to PFF in that round 2 to 4 range, guys. D+.
The experts would love us. The experts would love us, though.
Hey, we got a B- draft. I'm not mad at this draft, guys.
11 wins and a wild card berth. Here we go.
No, I don't think Ertz will get out of the first round. I don't. So if he's there in the second, you got to jump because he's not getting out of that. Not with the way the tackles go in these drafts, especially a guy that offers guard versatility too.
Okay, well, I will save that mock and we'll start a new one. We'll do another one. So it says we should have taken Braden Swinson at edge instead of when we drafted Ezra.
No.
And I don't
Swinson's fine, but he's lost in the shuffle of all these. It's like Swinson, Ivy, Princely, Manua, Sawyer, as they all kind of float in kind of together a bit.
Do we want to change any of the settings, guys?
That worked.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, so what we're going to do first, though, is we are going to make a trade. Who do we think Seattle's going to send DK to? And are we going to require are we going to get a second and be realistic, or are we going to get a late first?
Oh, let's do the Chargers. Let's say the Chargers come out. That one makes a lot of sense to me eventually. So Let's go with the Charger pick.
Where are our Chargers in here? There we go. Chargers. Okay, so we'll take pick 22.
Call it pure. Give them 22. Give us Davin pick. We give them DK. We get 22. That's all we get.
Really quick, would we all agree to take that deal, right? In real life, if that happens?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'm going to force it because we know this thing may not like it.
It'll love it. Be like, you're getting ripped off.
Do we think there's any chance there's another pick later on in this?
I would not. If we get pick 22, I would be surprised.
That's definitely probably as high. I do think that there's a feasibility to it because all the factors we talked about early, but also when you look at the Chargers in that playoff game, what happened in that playoff game? Your big top 20 pick when Johnson crapped the bed and couldn't catch a cold. And you had two guys with drop balls that got intercepted in that playoff game, and everybody's questioning Herbert on the back of it. Oh, Herbert, is he that guy? And I'm sure from Harbaugh's standpoint, he wants to back up and get him. This is a piece you could get that would, especially the off-script stuff with Herbert mixing with DK.
Yeah.
The power run game, because that's the whole thing with DK. I think he's got to understand to maximize him more than going to a spread system or him being moved around all the places. It's more about get the defenses that have to play to the run, like I did early in my career, pull that safety off the cover two. Now I can take the top off the defense with just a single high safety over there and a lot of one-on-one opportunities.
Okay, so we made the trade. We've got pick 22. The Chargers now have DK Metcalf.
Let's go.
All right, so board falls in this way. Abdul Carter.
Michael Williams.
Hunter. Cam Ward's there again.
Where's Michael Williams?
What? We got Cam Ward. We can take our quarterback.
Cam Ward. Let's say Cam Ward dips just for whatever reason. I like that.
You want to take Cam Ward here? Somehow do we realistically think he falls?
I don't think he falls. So Michael Williams would be my
Let's
pick.
redo this. Let's actually redo this properly. I don't want Cam Ward there because I don't feel it's fair to our listeners that Cam Ward somehow ended up there.
Something terrible happened to Cam Ward at Lambeau Field an hour before the draft.
Was horrible.
He got shot as he was getting out of the car at the
He can no longer throw with his right arm, guys. It's over. Okay, let's try this again and let's see if this does this weird thing for us again. And then somehow, if it does, then we deal with it. But okay, DK's gone. Start draft. Okay, and he's there again. It's destiny.
We can't
guys.
pick him. He's not going to be there. We got
No,
it.
he's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
going to be there at all. So Travis Hunter went, Abdul Carter, McMillan, Will Campbell to the Patriots, Membo to the Raiders, Malachi Starks, Genty goes to the Panthers, which I don't think would also happen considering what they've done with Hubbard and such. There you go. The 49ers take James Pierce again, Tyler Warner to the Cowboys, Mike Green will. I'm sorry, Brandon. He's gone to the Colts.
It's not meant to be.
Okay, so we're on the clock. And we're on the clock again in 4 picks.
Scroll down off the list real quick. I mean, Grant's obviously. I just want to see what else we got there.
So what would be kind of, would be funny is you trade DK and then you give Geno Loveland and Golden.
Oh, jeez.
I'm not saying that fits necessarily the image that I think we all think McDonald and John wants to go with, but that's
I think you could get him and Kenneth Grant. Or you go Kenneth Grant and somebody else and still come back.
I do have Golden. I do have Golden higher. I have Golden with a second round grade, but I have him higher than Besh even. I think your scenario, I don't think that's the worst of scenarios go just to play around. We went trenches last time, so maybe reversing off the trench. We get back to the trench in the second round, but let's maybe go.
Calvin Banks is still there.
I would have a higher deal on Kenneth Grant than that. And I do think Kenneth Grant's going to be a better player than Golden. But if you did want to dip in that scenario, it's an interesting scenario.
What if we went Kenneth Grant and then came back and got Golden?
Or I do like that. I think Golden reminds me a lot of Brandon Ayuk, especially if you watch that Georgia tape in the Peach Bowl. I thought there was a lot there, and they look very similar. Another FU. Hey, Harbaugh, you want to take Metcalf? Cool. We're going to take 2 Wolverines from you. Yeah. We're going to take Grant and then take Loveland if he's there.
Let's try that.
I think. Yeah, I would take Grant right now because of the way the board works. We'll see if Loveland's there at 18, but
okay. All right. So we're gonna go with Kenneth Grant again. Oh God, he's there.
Loveland.
Banks went, Stewart went, Cam Ward went to the Steelers. So Golden's there and Loveland's there. But
I gotta go.
We don't have a DK anymore. So really JSN and Jake Bobo are our only receiving options currently at the wide receiver position. And Cody White, I guess.
I got to go Golden on this one.
Yeah,
I do love Loveland. He's my tight end too in this draft. I do like Warren a little bit better, but he's neck and neck with him. I just think Golden has confirmed, and he's got the NFL skill set as a receiver. Yeah. The speed's legit, the route running's legit, the hands are legit. It should all translate.
I think he's a better athletic version of JSN in some respects.
And he's got the speed. I mean, that's the thing. That the speed is so legit.
Version of JSN, and you have both of them in an offense together. That's going to be 12 personnel. I think Golden complements JSN's skill set well, and you don't lose a lot.
Yeah, they complement each other, and this is a nice tight end draft. We can get a tight end later.
Yep.
And you already have Barner. You already have a guy that we know Mike McDonald really likes.
Yeah. Amen.
All right, Matthew Golden it is. So we fill DK's spot. Oh,
I would be so excited right now if I was the Seahawks, knowing it sucks to lose DK. But if you told me I get Kenneth Grant and Matthew Golden in round 1, and I feel like that's some of that hope, while also understanding we're going at the trenches.
Okay, so just to point out, Loveland went to Buffalo, so Josh Allen now gets Kincaid and Loveland, and Jack Besh went to the Eagles.
Ooh, we got Shadur Sanders, folks, in the second round of your Hawks.
Oh, God. Nick Emenwari fell to the second round. Landon Jackson. You know who's still here, I think? Both of these guys are still here. So we're going to get Kenneth Grant, Matthew Golden, and one of these two.
Again, I go back to the high side. I think Irsay's first round. I have a second round grade on Jackson. I think Irsay's number 1 as a first round grade. So that'd be my preference on the between the picks on that. Could be interesting too. Just do a different scenario on this one, a Shamar Stewart type, because the value's pretty good too.
I was going to ask Brandon, do you actually think either of those two guys are there at 50?
I think that the tackle experience with Jackson is going to probably push him into the first round, because there's going to be probably teams that be like, yeah, we think he's a guard, but he's legit a tackle player, to where we put him in tackle, he'll not only hold up over there, but he'll be able to even at times excel over there. And I think that just upped his value in such a major way that it removes him off the board at that point.
Okay,
Right. And so that's
then-
where I'm thinking Tate Ratledge is a guy that realistically feels like they can be there at 50. Personally, I'm pretty high on him, maybe a little bit more than others. I know you like him, Bryce, but
I think Jonah 7-9 is another one that could be there at pick 50.
But the one thing to think about this though is that I like those guys, I do. But with a guy like Shamar Stewart and the upside that's there with the guy there, that's the part to measure this up against is, where do you guys stand on that upside of Dizzy? Is he a quasi
Shamar
first round
Turner, you
talent
mean?
versus Shamar Stewart? Oh, I thought it was no,
No, it's not Stewart, it's Turner.
Back to lineman. Back to lineman.
yeah, I'm
Pivot.
Where's Michael Williams?
Pivot. No, I think Sevenia is great. Marcus Mbau's interesting too. He's 6'3", really powerful, moves really well. I think he would fit to the zone scheme. I think I'd even like him a little bit more than Tate Ratledge myself. I like Tate too in the second round, but I have Mabo with a little bit of a higher grade, and I think he gives you tackle flexibility in addition to that.
So here's my question on, and I agree with you, Brandon, but do you take the SEC starting years of Tate Ratledge into consideration against the talent he's going against? And you do have 2 tackles right now, and hopefully Lucas, based on what he's been showing on Instagram and his movement, looks like he's getting back. Do you go with a Ratledge to help fortify that inside?
The reason I would go with Mbau is some of this is also getting a year ahead of this scenario. If Lucas goes out and he balls out this year, he's going to be a free agent after the season, as is Charles Cross if you don't get an extension done with him. So it gives you a little bit of that Eagles approach of get a year ahead of stuff, have your insurance, don't get held over the barrel.
Okay, let's go with Mbau then. Okay. And my tight end's there.
All day.
Mason Taylor.
All day in the third round late, I would do that.
And so is Tate Ratledge.
I'd go that route too. I'm either good one. I'm good with that on you guys with either of those.
Michael, you pick. Who are we going with, Taylor or Ratledge?
I'm taking the seam god. Give me Mason Taylor.
He's taking the genetics.
Yeah. Okay. So we got our tight end. Tate Ratledge did go to Jacksonville.
Oh, his poor career's over already.
Before we even began.
All right. So now we're in the 4th round again. Do we look at safety? Not really anyone there of appeal.
Corner.
What do you guys think of Riley Leonard
No.
post national championship game? You out?
I can't do it with him.
I just don't see it. Like when I know that there's a chance that there's going to be a Tyler Shuck or a McCord or one of those guys still there, or Riley Leonard, I'm going with guys that I've seen better passing. And like Brandon said, progression, those type of things. Riley Leonard, just, I don't see it. I don't see the translation.
I don't either. Can you try edge?
Yep. I like RJ Oben out of Notre Dame. I know he doesn't have the production, but he does have a ridiculous skill set.
Let's come back to receiver.
Or can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
What about running back?
Nah. You're already stacked up with 3 deep on this, and there's some value here in other positions that I think we could really use.
Kyle Williams, Nick Nash, Ricky White.
I like Kyle. I like Kyle Williams. Yeah, we get Ricky later. We can get Ricky later on this though, and I like that scenario. Less getting him more in the 6th than picking a receiver here. Really, I kind of just wanted to see it. How about just check out tight end really one more time?
Okay. Jackson Hawes is a guy I actually like from Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I would prefer Jackson Hawes because what I like about this scenario is that you've got your blocker, and that's a fullback, and that's the best blocking tight end in this draft by far.
Yep, makes sense.
Okay, so he ranks out at ADP roughly around 160. We're at 137. Our next pick is 173. He may still be there. Do we look and see if there's anyone in the O-line area that we're interested in?
Yeah, we can take a look. I like Luke Condra. He's a right guard there out of Cincinnati. That's a good value pick there.
I like Luke Condra too.
He's nice.
I think he gives you a true guard. So we talked about Mbu being someone that we can have as versatility. Now we're getting a guard that's got good zone grading too.
And he's better than what you have, I think, on the roster in Lumea and in Bradford and maybe even in Haynes.
Yes, I think he immediately upgrades over Lamea and Bradford as well.
Do you think McLaughlin would be there in the next round?
I think so.
I think so because of the injury. I think it's already centers don't go high, and then you're coming off that
Right.
ACL, and they're like, are we going to get you back day one, or is this a wait a year out to get you fully right thing? So I think that just even that there's a question there does push you down that extra kind of round and a half-ish.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we do this or do we do one other
Let's
thing?
go Condra. Condra is the more getting the line right's the bigger priority, and that's the better value pick, I think, there.
Yeah, so we'll go with Condra.
And then hopefully Haas is back available.
And the
for us in
49ers took Quinn Ewers. Haas is right there, like I figured he might be.
Ooh, you took a risk, buddy. You're
Yeah,
right
you
on the
did. Look at
line. You're playing the line.
I do like, by the way, another quarterback I think is a sneaky one is Brady Cook.
Shocks there too. I'd go
Shocks
Haas
there,
though
too.
here.
Yep, I would too. So now we got a bunch of tight ends, and Tyler Shuck's there, and this is where we take Tyler Shuck in the
Shock.
6th round.
Shock all day. Yep. 6th round shock. 6th round shock.
Worth a shot.
Or the shot. I'll take a shot.
And again,
in
I
the park.
agree with you on the age thing too, Brandon. Like you could still, if he starts as a 28-year-old, you can still get 10 years out of him.
Yeah, every other position you do penalize for age. Valid.
Yeah.
24-year-old guy, been playing 6, 7, 8 years like some of these guys who spend half their life in college. Yeah, go ahead. Quarterback, it's an advanced position that takes a long time to master. The more time they can be mastering at the college level, and you're not having to get them, greased through at the pro level, the better, in my opinion.
I hate the Buffalo Bills now, guys. They stole Ricky White from us. 7 picks.
That's
before.
such a good place for him to go.
So this is our receiving room right now. Will Shepard, Wester, Rock Taylor, someone that interests me out of Memphis.
Boy, if Kyron Lacey could just drive, right?
No kidding. Frick. All right, let's look at the running backs. We're in round 6. Let me look at my running backs.
Gosh, what a weird year for Ollie Gordon.
Right?
I mean, I hate to see it, as a Sooners fan, but Donovan Edwards, another weird year.
Yeah, I don't like any of this. I don't like this.
Okay, so the big board, you got quarterbacks, you got safety.
Slater's there.
Slater's there. Do we double dip and take Slater again? So's Crawford.
Slater becomes your left guard of the future, and then you got your right guard with Condra.
Okay.
Yeah, I would either go that or I'd go Crawford.
Crawford's nice too. I'm okay either way on that either too. So you
Brandon,
pick
for
between
once,
that.
you have to jump on a side.
Let's go with Crawford.
Okay.
I like this pick. Mix it up.
Where did Slater go? Oh, wait. Oh, he went right there to Cleveland. Oh, his career's over. All right. So linebacker and Moden's
go.
still there.
Smale's there.
Clay
Smale
Webb's there.
with the cooking. Clay's fine too. I haven't seen any tape on him, so I'm blind on that one.
I actually don't mind Clay Webb's tape.
I'm okay with that.
So
I'm
this is
going
our
back to
picks
the
so
line.
far, guys. Kenneth Grant, Golden, Embo, Taylor, Condra, Haas. We haven't taken a receiver. Is there anybody in this receiver group that we like? Rock Taylor's the only one that I could realistically see.
I haven't seen him yet myself. I haven't had a chance to watch him, so I don't know anything about these guys.
Brew's one of those interesting former 5-star that could never get healthy and put it together, but physically looks the part. So I wonder if John would be interested in him. Rock is the guy that has done it,
Yeah, he's 6'3", 215. And most of his slot, he's not a big slot. He's a lot of wides. But we're looking at a guy that's perennially last 2 years been 1,000-yard receiver almost. But look at his his yards for reception are that intermediate range of 14 to 15.
Yeah, I'm with it. I think it's a good pick.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go and get a receiver here. Which one do you think we grade better on, guys?
We have the extra pick in the second one, so
Yeah.
It's always
when you hit Grant and Golden at those picks,
we ended up with the same grade, guys.
Yeah. I think the second one's better, but it's by the numbers. I think they're both pretty solid. I think we'd feel pretty good about either draft if we came out of either of them. I don't think we'd be like, oof, we missed on this one. I think we'd be like, we got most of them right.
Here's a funny thing, guys. Mookie jumped in, Mookie Alexander. He goes, you took a receiver, you took Golden. We can never have enough receivers, Mookie. Come on.
We're losing Tyler, man. We need a Z replacement.
All right, guys. I think that'll do it for tonight because that was let me fix this. That's an ugly way of looking at that. There we go. So, guys, those are our mocks. If any of those ended up happening for Seattle, I'd be really happy with it.
Me too, as well. It'd be great too, as if you could really be able to, and I know John's not likely to do it, but if you could really take care of some of this offensive line in a major way to be able to set the stage to do what kind of we were able to do, which is really purely draft for value. John sometimes does this, but he does it with the 1-year contracts where guys are sort of like last legs and they got a little bit of juice left. But I've got my insurance policy. It's like, yeah, but it's not a quality insurance policy. So it does still come back to the same predicament of it really relying on the youngster to come in there like a Haynes last year and be ready to go as to have the stable vet there instead. So that'd be the really nice part, especially comes that line, man. If you could double dip, if you could get a Dahlman and a Tevin Jenkins, I know I'm dreaming big here, brothers, but if you could do that, you really set that stage to be able to really roll this draft the way you want to roll it.
Mike Holmgren said, you pay for offense, you draft for defense. That's his biggest regret,
That's right.
And I think the draft is also not about just fixing your weaknesses, but sometimes it's making a strength a super strength. And I think adding Grant to Murphy to Leo, that is something that can literally, that unit can just wreck opposing offenses. And that itself can get you into the playoffs while you figure everything else out with all the uncertainty that's going on right now in Seattle. And then again, I really like Golden. If Golden is your young replacement for the future for DK Metcalf, I'm open to that. I like that.
Yeah, honestly, between the two, I actually like the DK draft where he traded him better. I feel we were able to, the board fell in a way. We were able to address more needs. And I think, our worst graded pick was the Embo pick at round 250, but I agree with you, Brandon. I think he brings a lot of versatility. And I think we fixed our tight end room. AJ Barner, Mason Taylor, and Jackson Hawes. Like, that's a very good, young, talented receiver or tight end room. So it'll be interesting. But we got one super chat in here from Megan. She goes, was more upset about Tyler Lockett, even though I expected it. If DK wants out, and yes, he was the first Hawks jersey I ever owned, let him go and prep for the future. Megan, thank you so much for the $10 donation. It's greatly appreciated. And thank you for also subscribing today and becoming a member. Really appreciate it as well. Yeah, guys, it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks here. I think if there's anything that happens with DK, I think it might happen sooner rather than later. I don't, like John said, the deadline of the draft. I don't know if that'll be the case. I think they're going to want more clarity so they can either pivot their way they're looking at the draft board or whatnot prior to it, or if they're going to bring in somebody else as well.
This is going to happen the next week.
Yeah.
Straight out. And the reason being is that it's the longer you wait, the less you get back in return, because whoever trades for DK has to give him a contract extension.
Yeah.
So if the number of teams limit down and they got to give a $30 million extension out, that's not going to get you maximum returns back. So you learn in a week whether or not you're getting the returns back, or they're telling DK, hey, you're going to have to ride this out for another year and us find a compromise on this situation, because we're not just going to give you away.
Agreed. And we also got a new member. Dave Espa joins the membership group. So I appreciate that, Dave. Thank you so much. Yeah, guys, I agree with you. I think this ends up, being a situation where it's going to happen. I think we'll hear more clarity on DK and what his situation is before we hear about a contract extension for Gino potentially.
Yeah, it takes priority at this point. Hey, Gino, we'll get back to you. This is 4-alarm fire just got pulled. So we got to get the hoses out.
All right, guys. So, Mike, what do you have coming up? With your new gig over there at Field Goals with Mookie and everybody, what do you got coming up in the pipeline?
Yeah, really excited to be joining such an awesome team that Mookie's putting together. Really honored and excited. And what I'm working on right now is an article that will be based on this DK stuff, but not just on DK, but more so on John and Mike, and how I kind of think this is the moment. This is John's moment, make or break for his future here in Seattle, and the second wave of his career here in Seattle. Can he really turn this team back into what Brandon said earlier, a real contender? Not just saying you're a contender when you're not really one. Can he turn this into a positive, or is this the beginning of the end of his run? So that's what I'm working on right now. And then also, everyone, please go to your local churches, be nice to people, and pray for Drew Dahlman to the Seahawks.
Please, Lord. Please, Lord.
Yeah, no kidding. Brandon, what do you got going over at the Hawks Nest? I know you've been busy lately.
Yeah, running around. I'm just trying to get through all these prospects, man. I try to get to about 3:30 by the time we get to draft day. So I'm 200 deep, just grinding away on the tape. We're going to be doing the end-to-end free agency run. It's the 3 days of free agency. So I'll be up buck crack of dawn on all 3 days, kind of running a full day span on that, just doing the coverage across the league, what's going on with our Hawks, and any kind of breaking news around DK and whatnot. So it's next on deck for me.
Wow, that's going to be really interesting. I'll be definitely tuned into those, Brandon, for sure. And Mike, into your article coming out. As for us at the Hawk Zone, we will be back on Monday next week with another episode, guys, and Tuesday and Wednesday as well. We'll have Dana O'Gorman joining us next week, as well as Chris Clough. So 2 people that are going to be dialed in. It'll be right in the middle of that start of the free agency period there for Seattle. So maybe we'll be breaking news at that time. And then, guys, Sunday, hop on over to Pulse of the Draft, formerly known as The Pick Is In, but that is me and Dan's all NFL draft show. And that show is, guys, again, we'd love all your Seahawk questions, but it's mainly focused for the NFL draft. So bring any draft questions you got over there. We'll be going on there on Sunday. Other than that, guys, join the membership program. Few people did tonight. Greatly appreciate it. It's down in the link below. There's 2 different levels of a membership you can be. And also, guys, please subscribe to the channel. Click the notifications so you're never late for things, because we'll have guests like Brandon, Michael back throughout the off season. We got other guests coming up as well. Like I said, Dana and Chris. So it'll be a lot of fun. But guys, can I get a go Hawks?
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.